Good morning, which is something we do not say here very often. It's the PowerMizzou.com podcast, but it's an episode like we've never done before, and we're going to be here with you guys all morning long on the show. Look, the big news, we're going to get right to it. PowerMizzou.com, still the same site, still the same website address. You type PowerMizzou.com into your address bar, you are going to end up at our site. I'm Gabe DeArmond, still the publisher. Jarod Hamilton still covering football. Drew King covering basketball. Sean Williams covering recruiting, and a whole bunch of other people helping out. But the news today, we are now part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Guys, we are going to be here for 3 hours. We have got all kinds of guests. We will take your comments. We will take your questions, all kinds of stuff going on. But first, I just kind of want to tell you the process of how we got here and why we got here. I have been the publisher of this website since 2006. I've been approached many times by various people to take what we do onto their platform. It's never felt like the right move. Whether that was anything to do with the network I was at, the networks that I could potentially go to, or quite honestly, the fact that I had 2 kids and I wasn't willing to uproot things and maybe take a chance at various times over the last 18 years. In the spring of 2023, in the winter of 2023, we started to look around a little bit, started to talk to some people. Talk to a bunch of them. I don't say this to toot our own horn. We had options, and I went through those options very thoroughly. I met with Joel Cox at 24/7 Sports. He brought me down to Nashville. Actually, drove from Kansas City, picked me up on the way, drove me all the way down to Nashville. Met with a whole bunch of people, some of whose names I know, some of whose names I've forgotten. They all seemed very important to me at the time, and they all seemed very interested in PowerMizzou.com coming over to 24/7 Sports. We're going to have a couple of those people on the show with us throughout the day. I left Nashville whenever Missouri went down and lost to Vanderbilt in basketball. A lot of people looked at me and said, "What in God's name are you doing here covering this basketball game?" Well, I had some things to take care of. Had some meetings and came away from that 99% sure what I wanted to do. Sat on it for a little while, and my mind didn't change. I wanted to take what we do to 24/7 Sports. We're going to go through the reasons for all of that over the next 3 hours. We're going to have guests on from 24/7, guys who have been here a lot longer than I have. I mean, I've been here 8 hours and 3 minutes, so they've all been here a lot longer than I have, but they're going to give you guys an idea of what you're going to get now that PowerMizzou.com is part of their platform. What you are going to get from me and my team is what you have gotten from me and my team for 21 years. You're going to get every single day the best coverage we can give you, and we believe the best coverage anywhere of the Missouri Tigers, football, basketball, recruiting, delving into some other sports. But you're going to get it on a platform that has so many more resources than we have ever had at our disposal. I believe just 4 minutes ago, a story on Matt Zollers went up. Brian Doan, regional recruiting analyst for 24/7 for the Pennsylvania area, talked to Matt last night, wrote up a story. I don't want to spoil the whole thing. Matt Zollers does not expect to miss spring football after his injury. Tom Loy, the director of recruiting coverage for 24/7, last night put up a huge notebook on Mizzou's 2025 class, gave you guys all kinds of notes. We're going to have some basketball recruiting information coming. We're going to have national coverage of Missouri and college football. We're going to start that with our first guest in about 10, 15 minutes. And look, guys, this is all kind of a loose time frame. I've given guys 15, 20-minute windows, but we're going to go as we go throughout the morning. Our first guest at about 8:15 is going to be Bud Elliott from 24/7 Sports, CBS, the Cover 3 podcast. I'll tell you guys right now, if you don't listen to it, listen to it. You want hardcore football, you want analysis, you want guys that are pretty funny, you want a good vibe. you listen to that podcast, download it. You're not going to be sad. I, in full disclosure, just started listening to it about 2 months ago. Haven't missed an episode since. And so Bud's going to join us here in the next 10, 15 minutes. He's going to kick it off. We're going to have 10, 11, 12 guests. I don't know, a lot of guests throughout the day. I'm going to read you off our plan. Bud Elliott's going to stop in. Our football writer, Jarod Hamilton's going to come on and talk about it a little bit. Alan Trieu, the Midwest recruiting analyst for 24/7, is going to jump on. Sean Williams, our own recruiting guy, going to jump on. Tom Loy, already mentioned him, National Director of Recruiting, is going to jump on. Richard Johnson covers college football for 24/7, CBS Sports. He's also on plenty of different platforms. Adam Stanko from CBS Video and 24/7 Video is going to jump on and give you guys an idea of all the different things we can do. We're going to have Drew King, Eric Bossi, Isaac Trotter, Carl Reed, all kinds of stuff coming up over the next 3 hours. I want to get to some of your comments, some of your questions, and we're going to start, as we always do, with Freeway Jarod, because Freeway Jarod always is nice enough to give us a little tip, and we do appreciate that. We never ask for it, but Jarod says, weeks ago when I saw 24/7 was going to cover Mizzou, I said, I'll never cheat on Gabe and go to the ops the whole time the game was the ops. I'm not going to pretend I understand all of that, but Jarod, we appreciate you're here, man. We appreciate you're on the site. We appreciate you are on this. And look, guys, I should have said this way sooner. We've been on the air 6 minutes and 50 seconds, and I haven't said this yet. Across the bottom of the screen throughout this show, all 3 hours or however long we're here, is scrolling your link to sign up for an annual subscription at 75% off. For your first year, we are going to charge you a grand total of $26.85. We've done the math. It's $2.24 a month. It's literally like, I don't even know what you can buy for. I'm not sure you can buy a 20-ounce soda for $2.24. That's what we're charging you for the first year. We understand there's a lot of people waking up this morning, frankly, saying, what in the hell happened? Where's the website? What's going on? We get that. We understand that a lot of you probably have money tied up where we used to be. That is beyond our control. We are not in control of that money or what happens to it. What we can control is that we understand the situation some of you are in. Your subscription may have renewed in March. It may have renewed in July. It may have renewed yesterday. We want to minimize the financial issues for you in that. That's why we are giving you the first year for $26.85. So literally, if your subscription renewed yesterday, it's going to cost you an extra $26 for over the course of the entire year. Thank 24/7 and CBS and everybody for getting behind that and making the commitment. They believe we will bring enough of you guys over that they are willing to front that and do that to get you guys in the front door. So again, the link is scrolling across the bottom of the screen throughout. It is all over our Twitter feed. It is all over our website, 247sports.com/college/Missouri/join/?promo. Or just go to PowerMizzou.com. If you don't already subscribe, the banner's going to be there. It is going to ask you to subscribe without question. I'm going to go through some of the comments. Appreciate seeing the bosses on here. I don't know which particular one that is, but thank you for checking us out, and hopefully, like, we don't get in trouble over the next 3 hours. We've done some stuff on YouTube before that, I don't know, some people leave us voicemails with some bad language. You know, it gets a little out of hand. Our subscribers have this weird thing that they want me to take my shirt off. So look, guys, Big Brother's watching here. I say that lovingly. But behave yourselves. You know, I mean, relatively. We don't like to be too boring. Just want to run through some of these comments. Look, we got 200 people on here at 8:09 on a Tuesday morning. That's awesome, guys. I'm not going to read all the comments, but I am just going to kind of scroll through them, and I want to acknowledge all the people that are here. Many of you have been with us at the last place, have been with us on a lot of our YouTubes. I know I recognize Tim Grace's name. saying that I'm getting a new fund to go to Kohl's and buy some button-ups. Look, I'm just going to tell you guys, there is nothing wrong with Kohl's button-ups. If it is good enough for Kirk Cousins, it is good enough for me. That's where we're gonna stand with that. And I told you our time frame is going to just kind of be a little bit fluid today. We're going to pop in 10, 11, 12 guests throughout the day. So every time somebody pops into the green room, as we like to call it, we're going to pop them up on the screen as soon as I get a thumbs up and know everybody is ready to go. We've got that. Our first, and I say this in complete seriousness, when I told some of my friends back in, early summer that we were going to go to 24/7, the first thing they said is, can you please be on the Cover 3 podcast and can you please talk to Bud Elliott? So this is what we're doing. Bud, appreciate you taking some time with us this morning, man.
Gabe, it's an honor, dude. As a guy that used to run a team site, like y'all's site is ridiculously good. And I'm so excited you're on board with us now, man. This is awesome.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's a huge day for us. I know. Very excited about it, and I will be popping on with Bud and Chip and Tom and Danny later this week. So we'll make sure to get that out to you guys. So, Bud, this is the first question I'm asking everybody because, as I said, I have now been part of 24/7 for 8 hours and 11 minutes. Everybody on this show knows way more about it than I do. So for all of our fans, all of our subscribers that are watching, can you give them kind of an idea what they're going to get? All the different avenues and resources they have now if they come be part of this?
Sure. So I obviously they're still going to get your great coverage on Missouri. I think they get the best team site network in the game, right? The ability to to call up Carter at our Texas A&M site, right? To be able to call up John Talty and those guys at Bama 247 and have real intel on like what's the opponent going to be, right? Like I think some of our I run our podcast network still, and I check into our StreamYard, and I was like, oh wow, like they're collabing. There's some really good, back and forth. I think honestly, some of the communication that they do behind the scenes only helps better recruiting info. To be honest, like everybody, we were down there at Future 50, right, and we were playing golf. And our Auburn guys are working with our Georgia guys, are working with our Bama guys, and it's like, hey, what are you hearing on this? And I really do think everybody, tries to pull together with the same goal in mind, which is to have good coverage and to be to be right and to inform folks. So I think you're getting that, and I also think our national team, right? Whether it's Talty or Hummer or Marcelo or Zenitz or any of those guys are really really strong in this space, and CBS has thankfully kind of embraced that.
I know. I think most people probably most associate you with Cover 3, but you wear, from what I've been told, you like pretty much are the Swiss Army knife. When 24/7 says we need something done, Bud is the guy who gets that done behind the scenes.
Yeah, I try to be right. I Cover 3 is my main focus. I do CBS HQ appearances as well. Some on the 24/7 Sports, shows on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, and some of our recruiting analytics behind the scenes, and just some auto-generated reports that I kind of just run some filters on that maybe help our staff stay ahead of some of the trends that just, hey, let's bubble up this guy, let's bubble up that guy, and then I did recruiting for such a long time for SB Nation and then for 24/7, and I still live in Florida, so I try to make it out to the camp circuit for all the stuff that happens in Florida and a little bit in the Southeast as well. We'll still hit Elite 11 and whatnot, and then if you need any help with the podcast network stuff, I don't really know exactly what we'll be doing there, but I do see the CBS Sports 24/7 Sports logo in the top right of the screen, so I'm excited about that. We can hook you up there as well.
All right. So look, most people are not here to congratulate me and hear about all the things we're going to do. They want to talk Mizzou football. You, as far as a national guy, like you guys are you do it in a fun way, but you're balanced for the most part. So your impression of Missouri at the end of September versus what you thought of Missouri at the end of August.
I'm kind of mixed because I think Boston College is a better team than people realize they are. So I don't really ding them for that performance all that much. And I think BC can be a little bit like a frustrating team to play. Like they're probably not going to beat you if you're a certain level. And obviously Missouri, turned that one around and took care of business. I'm also not entirely sure that Buffalo was playing to win that game. I think they were kind of, look, man, I mean, it's not to the Kent State level where Kent State, I mean, they were literally running 22 seconds per yard against Penn State, which I've never seen before. but that was wild. But I mean, Buffalo's playing like really, really far off the ball. Like to me, that's hey man, it's a paycheck game. Let's not lose by 50. Okay, let's try to lose by something in the mid 30s. So we really haven't seen Missouri be able to like get out and like fully run on the highway, to use like a car example. Like what is their top gear? I don't know that we've seen it so far this year. Part of that might be, some of the new pieces on the offensive line. Like, are they quite as physical last year as they were last year? Like I thought some of their zone stuff last year was really creative. And I've known Drinkwitz for a long time. Back when he was the NC State quarterbacks coach, I think, when he was
quarterbacks coach. And then
I met him at Lehigh High School in 2011, maybe. And he was recruiting somebody. And then I remember I talked to him when he was recruiting Leary back to NC State before he went back to wherever I'm trying to remember the career path, but like he's got a lot of really creative stuff, and I wonder how much they're holding back. I do kind of think that A&M gets Wegman back this week, by the way. So, and I
don't mean to interrupt you. Is that good for A&M?
So 3 weeks ago, I would have told you no, because I thought they did a really nice job with Marcel Reed. Subsequent to that, I think Reed has missed a lot of open stuff, like just not seen it. I've talked to some guys who have played A&M in the last couple of weeks, and they're like, yeah, it's not quite as good in the last 2 weeks as it was against the Gators. So having somebody back who can identify when the guy is open and then hit him, even though the mobility is probably not, quite what Reed has, or definitely not what Reed has, obviously. I think it's probably an upgrade for the Aggies, because at a certain point, if DCs know that you're just not going to see stuff and hit it on time, they're going to just keep taking chances with that. So that'll be an interesting thing if they actually do get Wegman back, and how healthy does he really look?
You and I talked about this a little. I think it was after the Vandy game, and I've had this same conversation with 4 or 5 different people who don't follow Missouri every day, but follow Missouri. And everybody says the same thing. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know exactly what it is. It just doesn't look quite as good offensively as I thought it was going to look.
Last year, I thought they had a run game that would really punish you. And the run game's not bad this year. It just doesn't look quite as not quite as crisp, and maybe not quite as physical, I guess. They're also Cook ran the ball some last year. Do we think, you're the Missouri guy. Do you think that they are intentionally holding Cook back and not running him in non-conference play to not get him dinged?
It's possible, because he's been so beat up, but that kind of goes out the window for me when you find yourself in overtime against Vandy.
Sure.
The whole idea of we don't need to call the good plays goes away when you're in that game in the second half. So I wrote this a couple weeks ago. Missouri's had 45 offensive drives this season. 36 of them have crossed midfield. They're averaging 4.4 points on those drives. They are great until they get to the opponent's 35-yard line. They have kicked 3 more field goals than anybody else in America. To me, their sole problem is just they haven't finished drives. I don't think anything is really wrong with them. I think Brady Cook, maybe a tick off, but Brady Cook isn't Jaden Daniels, right? I think their big problem is they need to make 1 or 2 more plays on 1 or 2 more drives, and then nobody's complaining about the offense.
I would have to look this up, which it's bad podcasting to do on the air, but did they score from distance last year more often, so that we didn't see quite the volume of red zone trips last year? In my mind, I'm like, man, Missouri would score long touchdowns quite often. Maybe teams have just seeded and they're like, look, we can't stop the explosive stuff, or we'd have to stop the explosive stuff. Right. We'd rather take our chance. On cover 3, we call it red zone roulette, right? Let's spin the red zone wheel. Maybe we come out on top as a defense, but we can't allow Missouri to beat us deep. That to me is something I wonder. Our team's just playing more too high against them and saying, all right, we'll take our chances because you guys are too explosive in the pass game.
Yeah. So last year, Cody Schrader through 6 games he was a good running back. He was fine. But Brady Cook and Luther Burden torched Kansas State, and then Brady torched LSU. Everybody torched LSU, but Brady torched LSU. And, he had 3 or 4 straight 350-yard games. And at that point, defenses said, okay, we can't let you beat us over the top. And Kirby Moore just handed the ball to Cody Schrader for the entire last 7 games of the season. So what are the chances that, because Nate Noel is averaging 120 yards a game, defenses go, all right, we got to bring an extra guy. We know the reputation of Luther Burden and the receivers, but we can't let them just beat us to death with the run game. They come up, and that unlocks Brady Cook a little bit.
I think it's possible. We will see this weekend, because if nothing else, Mike Elko is extremely patient. I mean, even going back to his days at Duke and with the Irish, I mean, they were very much like, we will deny the explosive play and we will play red zone roulette. It was really hard to get over the top on Duke last year. They made you execute and be consistent. That's another thing with Cook is like, there's accuracy, and then there's accuracy that allows for yards after the catch. You know, when I watch Missouri this year, I'm like, I need a little bit better ball placement at times in order so that the guy catches it in a position from which he can explode, you know, and not have to gather himself. And like, I'm not saying Cook's an inaccurate passer. I think he's like a solid, decent quarterback with really good weapons around him and a very good, head coach, obviously an offensive mind there. But if he could be a little more accurate and hit guys in stride a little more, maybe they can get some more explosives that way, right? I wonder, like, that's clearly part of this when you bring in more of those two high safety defenses that are just going to try to deny explosives over the top.
All right, so last thing I wanted to hit on with you, and Kyle McCormick brings it up, and this is not about you. A lot of people had this, and he says Bud puts Ole Miss in a different category than us. So one of my very good friends covers Ole Miss, and we talked a lot before the season. Missouri and Ole Miss are the same team. They're not being treated like the same team, right? There was a lot of Missouri got a little lucky. The only reason I'm really putting them here is the schedule. I expect to step back because they're not going to get the same good fortune. Ole Miss had a very similar season, very similar schedule. And I feel like everybody that put things together had Ole Miss as like 4, 5, 6 in the country, and everybody had Missouri as 10, 11, and 12. So at the start of the season, why was that difference justified? Because everybody had it. It wasn't one or two people.
No, I'll own that take, and I don't really think that I'm going to back down from that take. I think Dart's a better player than Brady Cook. Personally, I think they have an edge at quarterback, and I think they have an edge on the defensive line, and in fact, a pretty material one. I think Walter Nolan and Princely are materially better than what Missouri has up front. So if you look at like two of the most premium positions, defensive line and quarterback, I do think that Ole Miss is better in those spots.
Okay, so last weekend proved to us what we should know when we cover college football every year, which is quit wasting your time in week 2 talking about who's making the playoff, because Kentucky's going to go screw it all up and beat Ole Miss or something like that, right? And
yeah,
Ole Miss now is, and Missouri was very close to being in this situation, literally a shanked 31-yard field goal. Ole Miss, Missouri, they're in that boat of, I don't know that 10-2 does it, and you can't lose a game like Kentucky, because now Ole Miss almost has to beat Georgia to make up for that, and I don't know that they can do that.
Gabe, I agree with you, and here's the other problem. Like Purdue and Northwestern and UCLA and Wisconsin, because their quarterback got hurt, they're probably not going to pull a lot of upsets in the Big Ten. So I think the Big Ten has an excellent chance to get 4 teams in. People don't want to hear this, but if you model this out, like you're going to have UCLA or USC sitting there with probably a 1 or a 2 in the loss column. Oregon's probably going to have a 1 or a 2 or maybe a 0 if they find a way to to upset Ohio State. Like Iowa's probably not going to lose 5 games. Nebraska's probably not going to lose more than 3. Penn State's probably not going to lose more than 2. You're going to have a lot, and Indiana has an outside chance to go like 11-1, which is kind of insane. Ultimately, the Big Ten teams are going to have a lot of really good resume wins. And I think they got a pretty good chance to get 4. So I do think if Ole Miss loses to Georgia, that they could be in trouble.
And Missouri's kind of in that same situation, right? There's one game on Missouri's schedule they can afford to lose right now. Missouri will almost certainly, because Auburn's awful and UMass is awful, they're going to go to Tuscaloosa with everything they want on the table. I think this weekend determines whether they go there needing a win or able to absorb a loss.
Totally. The other thing is, like, I do think for Mizzou, Oklahoma beating Auburn's a good thing, because Oklahoma getting that win almost assures that they're a bowl team. And I do think it would have been a bad scenario if Auburn had won that game. I think Auburn probably still misses a bowl, and then Oklahoma almost certainly misses a bowl had they lost that game too. So you didn't want to have both of those teams miss bowls. Like for Mizzou, for the schedule resume argument, you need to have one so the committee can say, all right, what's their fourth best win? Assuming that they beat Oklahoma, which at this point, given how Oklahoma's offense looks, I definitely think Missouri would beat them. You say, hey, you know what? Yeah, like Oklahoma, very hard schedule, still made a bowl game against it. Missouri beat them. So, like, to me, that's an important resume bullet point here when you're projecting this stuff out. But also, like, how do you play against Alabama? Okay. Do you keep that game respectable? Because if so, like, I think the committee treats that differently. If you go,
it's what Missouri got so much credit for last year.
Right. Absolutely.
The 2 losses were really good losses.
No doubt. And I mean, that's a game, shoot, like, can Bama drive on people? I don't know. Like, Georgia really didn't make them, right? They just
don't have to.
Yeah. Give up explosives. Yeah. And obviously, if Milroe's going to be accurate, it's basically good night for the rest of the country. Like that's way different than what he was last year. Michigan was basically daring Bama to pass in the Rose Bowl, and now 9 months later, Milroe's just darting people up. So that's kind of scary for the rest of the country. No, I think Missouri definitely could make the playoff. 10-2 though is hard. I think they need BC to keep winning. By the way, like BC not losing to Western Kentucky, BC finding a way to beat Michigan State is important because there's a chance BC is like an 8-4 team. Like that's another decent resume point.
All right, last thing for you, and we'll let you go. I know. Look, everybody would be a lot better at gambling if you got to do over unders after week 5, right? But Missouri's, I think, before the season was 9.5 wins. I'm going to ask you over under on that as we sit here today, and then if I set the over under on the SEC playoff teams at 4.5.
Okay, so I will say Missouri over. I think 10-2 is the most likely outcome at this point. And I'll say under on the SEC playoff teams because I think the Big Ten gets 4 because of like what I was saying as far as the top being like so good as far as resume. And then I think the ACC has a pretty good chance to get 2 because Clemson and Miami, like if Clemson were to beat Miami in the ACC title game and they enter that game at 12-0 and 11-1, both those are going to go, I would think. So to me, like that could knock it out. There's also some chance, although the Big 12 is really heading for a 1-bid league status unless something really weird happens. But the Irish as well, beating Louisville, right? You're probably going to get, like, what's the over-under on ACC plus Notre Dame? 2.5?
I mean, I'm the wrong person to ask this because when Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, I said I refused to talk about them as a playoff team.
That's fair.
I know that they have a chance to get in, and if they're 11-1, they will get in. I would rather see 9-3 Georgia with Georgia scheduled than a team that lost to Northern Illinois in the playoff.
I think that's fair. I mean, yesterday I got skewered by Indiana fans for saying like I don't know that 11-1 should get Indiana in if they only play 3 teams that make a bowl like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, cool. You play 9 conference games, great, but you also your luck of the draw. Like that's the reason I bet the crap out of Indiana over this year, and Indiana conference wins over. They miss all the good teams.
We're going to get the ultimate college football question of, have we gotten past the idea that they mostly just look at the win column and it doesn't matter? Because that's what college football's always done. 12-0 has always been better than 11-1 until last year. We understand we won't bring that up, but
no, it's very much, let's do an ordinal rank by tiers of win column. SEC super brand names plus Ohio State, you're going to get like a half win of, sort of deference. And then we'll just proceed from there in an orderly fashion down the list. This year's going to be tough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. All right, Bud, we're going to let you go, but just for people who might be new to 24/7, new over here, where do they catch you guys? What's the best place to watch, listen, whatever they want to do?
Sure. So Cover 3 YouTube channel, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and at 11 a.m. Saturday night. I think it's the best recap in sports, to be honest. Like because we're not covering individual games, me, Chip, and Tom are like, I've got 8 screens here in the office. Like we're watching all the ball games. If you want like the most comprehensive recap of what happened in that day in college football, and you want it that night, come see us there. About 11:15, 11:30 on Saturday nights, and then today, usually 2:00 on CBS Sports Network, the cable channel, that which is another cool benefit of being here with us at 24/7 CBS. They'll probably have you guys featured on there at times. Normally we're on at 2. Today we're actually on at 1 because they have, I believe they have some kind of soccer game going on, which is actually pretty important. So
I thought for sure you were going to say playoff baseball, and everybody here knows the Kansas City Royals play at 3:38 today, and that's the biggest story of the day. So
my dad actually pitched to George Brett and Hal McRae in spring training.
Okay, how did he
down
do?
in Fort Myers. So if you guys are Royals fans, that was yeah.
Did he fare well?
No, actually, he said he realized even though he was a pretty good college pitcher, that was a good time to I'm gonna have to study really hard. And I think it was Brett didn't want to start by bunting, and they were making him bunt, and he just got off the golf course, and then he proceeded to hit like 6 topspin line drives in a row. And then I think McRae did not want to bunt at all and just hit like a couple bombs, even though they were telling him to go oppo first. And it was basically like, so he's like, okay, great. This is some of my best stuff. I've been warmed up, and just right back at the screen, little topspin line drive. So
everybody hits the end of the road at some point, but seriously, appreciate you taking the time, man. Can't wait to work with you guys and everything that's on the way.
Enjoyed it, Gabe. Welcome, man.
All right. That is Bud Elliott, Cover 3 podcast, 24/7 Sports, CBS. You find him all over. Appreciate his time. Our next guest, I told you guys we're just going to roll him in, roll him out. You know this guy. This guy's on our shows all the time. Jarod Hamilton. Jarod, you cut out early. Like you were in bed by like 3. Is that about right last night?
About 3:30.
This morning?
Yeah.
3:30. Okay.
So cut out early is crazy.
Right about 3 o'clock when you were probably getting home was the time that I said, I mean, I guess I could go to bed, but I got to get up in an hour and 40 minutes. So I don't really know what the point of that would be.
So you didn't go to sleep?
I did not go to sleep. No, we will sleep later. I have not had any sleep yet. So, all right. Jarod, we were just obviously talking with Bud Elliott, and we're going to talk just a little bit. I mean, hey, everybody heard why I'm excited about this move, why I think it's good for our site. Anything that like you want to say from your perspective, guys, you're going to now get to work with, anything that excites you about this move to 24/7?
I mean, I think it's so it's like a 1-to-1 thing. Like they obviously get Missouri coverage, and then we get to have those reps, get to talk on the podcast, maybe some TV or something like that. Just being able to talk about this team on a national platform, that's kind of cool. Obviously, what you've been building up these 20 plus years. I mean, it's been great to talk here and do what we've been doing, but like to be able to expand that, and like you were talking about the premier coverage for Missouri, athletics, and we get to kind of spread that around and say what we got to say. So I think that's cool. Somebody asked me yesterday, and my intro, my opening thing, I put on the board, like, what can we expect? I'm trying to see if, we can get some all 22 footage. I don't know how that's going to happen. I know there's a little bit of a process to it. It's not just as easy as we're here, we can get it, but if we can, that'll be cool. So things like that. I mean, just like you and everybody else on the team, I'm booked all day. We got practices and press conferences starting at noon. And then in between that, like anytime I'm not doing that, I'm you guys may see me on, some other podcasts revolving around this week 6 matchup versus Texas A&M. So we're going to be everywhere. And that's kind of cool. Like, that out of nowhere, it just seems like boom, everybody sees PM. So that's great.
All right, so let's talk about that, because we want to hit obviously on the move to 24/7. That's why we're doing this show. But everybody wants to talk football, and Jarod and I are going to do that tonight. We're going to have another live show 7 o'clock tonight. Our regular State of the Tigers. We'll do that again to kind of book in the day. But what are your first impressions of this game against Texas A&M? Like, what jumps off the page to you going into this
one? It's obviously Missouri's first big test. First couple things I look for. I mean, one, I think, how do teams react off of bye weeks? Obviously, like in the NFL, we know like Andy Reid and the Chiefs, they're notorious for being like really good after bye weeks. How is Missouri going to be on coming off the bye week versus a top 25 team on the road? They got a lot of help. I was also on my column. Missouri got a lot of help during this bye week. I mean, I said they basically should mark it as a W, even though it's just a bye week on the schedule. It should be a W, considering all the things that, kind of fell their way as far as certain teams winning, certain teams losing. So you got that help. Maybe there's not as much pressure to feel. I mean, there's still pressure. They really got to make that Alabama game basically 7-0, but it kind of feels a little better if, certain teams around you in the top 10 and certain teams in the conference, they start dropping games. You feel like you got some room to breathe. But first big test, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Nick Scorton. I hope that's how it is.
Nick Scorton. Yeah. Because he was a guy that Missouri wanted, and he never made the visit. He committed when he was in College Station.
Yeah, so monster. Like 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks last game. I mean, that's a first-round guy. Like, I'm interested to see, what the O-line does versus him. They also got Shamar Turner over there, who's another defensive tackle. So I'm interested to see how the trenches hold up on both sides regarding that. And then Brady Cook, Blake Craig, kind of seeing how those guys rebound after, not so great performances last time out.
Mm-hmm. So here's my take on this game, and I want to see if you think this is accurate analysis or not. I think Texas A&M has one way to win this game. I think Texas A&M can win this game 23-20, 21-17, basically the way they've won all their games so far. I think if this game gets to above 27 points, Missouri's the only team that can win that. So can Missouri win a 14-13 game? Yes. I think A&M has to win a 14-13 game. So what I'm saying is I think what we're looking at is one team that really only has one way to win, and the other team has a couple different ways. I mean, you think that's fair or unfair?
That's pretty fair. I don't know. I'll ask them. I don't know if they've said yet, if it's going to be Marcel Reed or Connor Wigman. They kind of provide 2 different things, I feel like, as far as quarterback play. So I'm interested in that and how they want to move with that. But yeah, I think Missouri can win. They can win a 13-14 game. They can also win a game where it's 27 plus points. But they gotta kind of put it together. They've got to get a rhythm in that passing game. I think if they can start attacking that Texas A&M pass defense and get some plays going, it'll open up everything they want to do. But that's something we've been kind of waiting to see a little bit. Can they open up that passing attack? Can they get the deep ball going and stuff like that? So I think Missouri can win either way, but it still has to take advantage. And they've got to play their game, and also I don't want to say down to their competition, as in Texas A&M isn't a good team. They're in the top 25 for a reason. But if they can only really win one way, Missouri, don't lock yourself into only winning that way or feeling like you have to be in a dogfight in the trenches or running the ball, or whatever that may be, because that's what Texas A&M can do.
When we were talking to Bud, he said he thinks A&M gets Connor Wigman back this week. Okay. I asked, I said, like, is that good? He thinks it is. He said he wouldn't have said it 2 weeks ago, but he thinks they're a better team with him now. Be interesting. I mean, he had an all-time bad quarterback game against Notre Dame. He was 12 for 30 for 99 yards, I think, was the final total. 2 picks against Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame's got a heck of a defense. They've got 2 NFL cornerbacks. I don't know if Missouri necessarily has that. But I just, barring a defensive score, a special team score, a short field, something like that, I just don't see A&M as a team putting up more than 24 points. So then it goes back to the Missouri offense. And I don't know if you were on yet when Bud and I were talking about this or not, but he and I messaged a few days ago, and he said the same thing that a lot of people have said about this Missouri team. And I think we've talked about it during games. I can't tell you exactly what's not working on offense. It just looks a little bit off. Like, that's not good analysis, but I don't know exactly what it is that isn't working. It just looks like it should work a little better.
It just feels like for Brady Cook and the top 7 receivers to return at points, it doesn't seem like that. And whether that may be a receiver drops a pass every now and then, or Brady's pass is a little off the mark, sometimes it just doesn't seem like they've been playing, together as long as they have. But I feel like that's something that'll come. I'm not really too worried about it. And if you look at the stats, I forgot who asked me this yesterday, but if you look at the stats on paper, Brady Cook and the passing offs, they're doing fine. But the eye test, obviously us being there for all these games, something seems a little bit off. I think you do that with just a little bit of mix of the play calling at times, some of the design QB runs, like Brady doesn't seem like himself when it comes to running, completely. And then sometimes I feel like just a little bit like when they could still run the ball, or they wait to run the ball after they have like a whole series of just mostly passing, and they may run once or something like that. Like sometimes they make it a little harder than it needs to be, I feel like at times. So maybe this bye week kind of helped them work some of that stuff out.
This is a question we're going to talk to Drinkwitz here in 3 hours. We probably won't get the answer to it, to be honest. But how healthy is Brett Norfleet coming off the bye? I don't know. I also don't know why he played the last 2 games.
Yeah, me neither. I really thought they were going to go up into the bye, considering it didn't seem like they needed Brett to win Vandy or the BC game, like going into that. And then this next part it's not a shot at Brett. It's just what has happened. He hasn't really showed too much on the box score, so they still didn't need him. So now you're kind of risking him taking those extra snaps and stuff like that for what, when you've got an early bye, in week 5. I imagine he's healthier than he was obviously a couple weeks ago, but that shoulder, and I mean he entered the season with an ankle injury or something like that. I mean, he's a little bit better, but we're not really going to know until in the season how bad that shoulder was or how bad the foot was. But I mean, I assume he's going to be as good as he's going to get until maybe the next bye or something like that,
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. And that's why I wouldn't have played him, because if you give him those 2 games off, he's got 3 full games. Well, 4, because I guess he didn't play against Buffalo. 4 full weeks where, you can rest him. And they opted not to. And I'm not saying I know better than them. Obviously, they know how healthy he is. Case asked, which is basically 2 different questions. I'm going to answer the first one right off the bat. Is this the most important game since the 2013 SEC title game? I say absolutely not. Multiple reasons. First of all, they played in the 2014 SEC title game. Might not have gotten them in a playoff, but like that's an SEC title. That's a huge deal. Georgia last year never felt like they were going to win that game. Here's the other one I would put as a more important game than this one. And this goes against everything I've ever said about bowl games. Last year's Cotton Bowl was a bigger game than Saturday is, because it set Missouri up for all this offseason and everything it's getting this year. Like, Missouri can lose Saturday and make the playoff, I think. Right?
Well, what's their record if they lose this? Like, what are you saying?
That's the thing. Like, if they lose this and they lose at Alabama, I think they can make the playoff. I don't know if they would, but I think they would have a shot at 10-2 with the losses at A&M, at Alabama. If BC puts together a decent season, if Oklahoma puts together a decent season, if South Carolina puts together a decent season, I don't know that gets you in, but it gets you in the conversation. The flip side of that is Case says if they win Saturday, they become pretty likely to make the playoff. I don't think I can agree with that yet. Do you?
I wouldn't say likely. I mean, your chances are definitely trending upward. I mean, because after A&M, what is it? Is that UMass and Auburn? So So you, in theory, again, should go into Alabama 7-0, and then playing with house money. The way Alabama played versus Georgia, Missouri is already going to be an underdog playing with house money. But now, if they did everybody saw what they did to Georgia for most of that game. And then even when they started trailing, it took them 1 play to get back in it and take it back. So it looked like super elite Alabama. That's kind of crazy to say, as if they weren't last year, but you know what I mean? And so if they beat Texas A&M, it's headed in the right direction. You can assume a loss at Alabama. Really got to get that Oklahoma win and just kind of finish the season strong. If they lose versus Texas A&M and they lose versus Alabama, your only win is Oklahoma. I can't remember Oklahoma's schedule as far as who they play before Missouri, but I know it's about to be tough.
Yeah, I think they play the Vikings the week before Missouri and the Texans the week after.
Yeah. So if Oklahoma, they start dropping games and they're maybe unranked by the time Missouri plays, like your best win is possibly an unranked or a bottom top 25 team, and that's it.
Right, but
I
that's
don't
why
know.
you need BC to be 9-3. You need South Carolina to surprise some people and be 8-4 and still beat them, right? Because I don't think Auburn's capable of that. I don't think Arkansas is capable of that, and I know Mississippi State's not capable of that.
Yeah, that's about right. But handle your own business, and you can worry a little bit less about who needs to do what to kind of save your tail. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're gonna have a million stories on this leading up to the game. Just give me a player on each side of the ball that you think is big in this game against A&M.
Mentioned it earlier for Texas A&M. I've actually got an article coming out later this week about the top 5 players you need to watch for A&M. But Nick Scorton, like, again, first round talent. He's a great edge. He can stuff the run. He can pressure the quarterback. I think he's second in the league with 7.5 tackles for loss. So he's a big time player for Missouri. I mean, I'm just gonna say Brady Cook. That's the obvious one, but honestly, in my mind, like what I'm thinking is Nate Noel and how much they give him the ball and what they can do in the run game. Because as we've seen throughout the season, he's been the one that kind of gets the offense going in some type of rhythm. So you could just say Brady Cook / Nate Noel for me.
All right, I'm going to flip it. If Nick Scorton is this, demon off the edge, which I think he very well might be, and I don't know which side, I don't know if he flips. I don't know who he's going to line up against, but whether that is Armand Mimbo or Marcus Bryant, one of those guys has to have probably his best game of the season. The other side, I'm going to go with, I think this has to be the game that Johnny Walker Jr. shows up. Because I saw what Connor Wegman did against Notre Dame. It's not good enough. If you get that guy off his spot, if you put him under some pressure, he's going to give you a chance. Joe Moore has been Missouri's best pass rusher off the edge. I mean, I'm sure this is unfair. I'm sure there was a couple plays. I don't really remember Johnny Walker's name in the last couple games. Do you?
He's may have had a play, every so often. I feel like the whole edge group as a whole, they're kind of like balanced with each other. No one's doing like terrible, but no one's doing like, I wouldn't say there's like a super standout. Joe Moore's had some standout. He's had a couple plays that maybe led to turnovers, or he just had really big hits. In some of the ways he's definitely improved since last year. So he kind of has like the it factor as far as like the plays he's making. Those look like, oh, you need those type of plays and stuff like that. But I feel like all the ends have kind of been around the same. And so, yeah, it would be very clutch if Johnny Walker had, big breakout game for this season, at least right here.
Yep. All right. So wrap it up. Look, the predictions will come later in the week and all that, but just give the people kind of a taste of what you got coming this week.
Everything. I mean, we've got the pressers later today. I just said I got the top 5 players from A&M to look out for. Obviously, I'm gonna have previews, predictions, all that going on, the normal stuff. Not too much is changing. We're probably adding, if anything. So even I don't know completely what all of that means. I've got to look at it step at a time, but I'll get to it.
All right, Jarod, appreciate you, man. Like I said, I mean, you got a minimum of like 2 hours sleep last night, so you're good. So we will see you at noon at Drinks press conference.
All right, see you later.
All right, have a good one. That's my guy, Jarod Hamilton. Obviously covers football here for us at PowerMizzou and 24/7 Sports, which is it might take me a minute to get used to saying that, guys, right? It's been 21 years that I've said something different. So I hope I don't slip up. Have not slipped up yet this morning. 24/7 Sports, again, information is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can save 75% on an annual subscription. That means you're going to pay over the course of a year $26.84 for 12 months of coverage, recruiting, football, basketball. We're going to have women's basketball in there. Coming up later on the site. Early this morning, Drew King had a one-on-one with Dennis Gates. Henry Chappell, our intern for this semester, actually had a one-on-one with Robin Pinchton. That's going to be up on the site later this morning. So we're going to cover everything for you more completely than anybody covers it. Same way we have. We're just going to do it better. So go to that link scrolling across the bottom of the screen, 247sports.com/college/Missouri/join/?promo. If you didn't get all that, watch the YouTube or just go to PowerMizzou.com. You're going to find it. So our next guest coming up, not quite here yet, but he is going to be here shortly. Our next guest is going to be Alan Trieu, the Midwest recruiting analyst for 24/7. I hope I have that title right. If I don't, I'll have Alan correct me. But he's going to be coming up with us in just a minute. Want to get to, while we've got a second, some of your comments, questions, whatever. Mr. David says it's 247 sports. I promise it's 24/7 sports. I made sure to ask that before I started talking about it, before I started telling people what to say. I asked it is 24/7 sports. That is the preferred lingo, as they say. Let's see, going back through some of the comments. Eric G says Zion Young's been in the backfield a lot. Yeah, he flashes. He's real high, and there have been a few valleys. He has made some plays. I think Missouri's best players so far on defense have been the defensive tackles. Christian Williams and Chris McClellan, they're all over the place. Chris McClellan is wrecking offensive game plans, guys. Christian Williams, I was surprised Christian Williams didn't go pro. I thought he was really good last year. NIL kept him in school. But McClellan's been better so far. But the point is, those two guys in the middle, they're playing at like SEC title level. I think on the edge, if the middle's here, like on the edge has a little bit to get there, right? To give Missouri this dominant offensive line. You heard Bud Elliott earlier saying one of the things that he thought was a differentiator between Ole Miss and Missouri was the defensive line. So what changes that? If Johnny plus a little, if Zion Young is, rather than 3 or 4 plays a game, 7 or 8 plays a game, right? So all of those things are things to look for going forward. And as we roll through guests, this is number 3 of, I think I said 11. It might be 12. I don't know. Our third guest, about to pop him on the screen just so he has a warning. Alan Trieu, okay, I am taking a shot here, Alan. I said you would correct me if I was wrong. The Midwest recruiting analyst for 24/7. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. I'm not a big titles guy. I cover the Midwest for 24/7. So as long as we get that out of the way, I'm good. You can call me whatever from there.
Perfect. All right. So we've got a whole bunch of different people on this morning. And as I said at the beginning, when we talked about Elliott, you've all been at 24/7 longer than I have. So I'm going to ask all of you in your role and from your perspective, what all the Missouri fans that are going to come over and join us, like, what's the benefit? What are they getting here that they're going to really like over the next, year and hopefully well beyond?
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel really strongly about our team. I've been at 24/7, and before that it was Scout, and when we merged, and that entire time, I started when I was 18, 19 years old, and I've worked with Brandon Huffman that entire time. I've worked with Greg Biggins almost this entire time. Brian Doan came on just a little bit later, but he's been here a long time. I mean, this crew has been together for a long time, and it's a little bit like we're brothers in that we give each other a hard time. Not everything always goes smoothly, but I think we respect each other. We like each other. We like the work that the other ones do. I don't ever have to worry about if there's something out east going on. I don't ever have to worry that Brian's not on it. Certainly if there's something out west, those guys are all over it. And that includes now the rest of the country too, with our whole national team from Tom Loy, and then our scouting team with Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patagnan and those guys. I mean, I really feel strongly about the people I work with. And that's the best thing that I could say is that I've only had 2 jobs in my life. I worked in an Italian restaurant when I was in middle school, high school, and then I worked doing football recruiting for Scout and 24/7. And it's really the team of people that I work with that's kept me around.
All right. So you made a mistake with this crowd saying you're not a titles guy. You are now, according to Mr. David, the assistant to the Midwest recruiting analyst. So,
Is
as
he
long as
saying,
they still
does
as
he
long as they
want
still pay you the same, it doesn't matter. But
yeah, it does. You can slap intern on my lower third if you want, as long as the check's the same, I'll be good.
all right. So before we get into some of Missouri's class and all that, I want to pop this up because Jay Sanders says we need to talk about ratings. So can you kind of explain to the fans the difference here at 24/7 with the rankings and the way they're done? And I'm just going to tell you guys, this is why when the rankings come out, do not go to Allen's Twitter and tell him he's an idiot because he's not the guy that did it.
I mean, they can still do that. That doesn't stop
Well,
other
okay.
fan bases from doing it. I may not respond to all of those, but I see them and talk to my therapist about it every week. So you can still do. No, I'm kidding. So with the ratings, it's gone through a shift. I used to be a lot more involved, and then recently, in the last couple of years, we've separated the scouting team and the recruiting team. So I'm on the recruiting team, and the philosophy behind that is, from being on the ground and doing this, like I met Carl Reed when he was a high school coach. I know a lot of coaches in the St. Louis area, sunk it at East St. Louis, et cetera, et cetera. You build these relationships with the trainers, with the kids, with their parents. And so we never want that to play into the ratings. So we have now a scouting team who doesn't know those people, right? So you're able to have people give a rate. And that's not to say that I was ever biased by having those relationships, but it does, by separating it does remove any doubt. That's not to say that I don't still have some ability to say, hey, I just went on the road and I saw Jason King, or I saw Titan Davis, or I saw whoever, and I think we ought to take another look, and those guys take that into account for sure. So I have a hand in the process, but ultimately the decisions are made by a very qualified scouting team. But I know we're joking around about this. I'm still very happy to answer questions about it and talk through. I do see a lot of kids. I watch a lot of film. I talk to a lot of people who know the kids on the ground. And so I do have information to pass on as it relates to that. I am also brutally honest. So, and it sounds like this crew will do well with that, and the fans will do well with that. I don't mind the back and forth. I don't mind being challenged. So basically what I'm saying is bring it on. Let's go.
All right. So I want to start big picture, talking a little Missouri, and then we'll zone in maybe on some specific parts of the class. But just over the last 3.5 years or so, since 4.5 years since Eli Drinkwitz has been here, from your role, talking to people all over the country, following what he's done, what's been kind of the evolution, your view of kind of the rise really of Mizzou recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, I think you start big and you look at, before he got there, would Luther Burden be on this roster? Would they have battled it out and gotten Caden Green back on the roster? I would guess no.
Probably
but just
not.
winning, probably not. Williams and Neri, all of those, for them to even be, as those recruitments were going on, I kept saying, like, hey, this is extremely impressive just that they're in this recruitment. They're in the final two. They're in the final three. Same thing with Ryan Wingo, even though he didn't ultimately end up at Mizzou. So the efforts to be in the top groups for all of those national prospects, not just from the state of Missouri, but I think you take care of your home base first. And when you have 5 stars and elite talent that's in the state, you have to win for those guys, or you have to at least show that you can prioritize them and be, like I said, in the battle. I think oftentimes recruiting is measured too much on, did you sign the guy or not? And I think you can tell how well a staff is doing by the battles that they're in on and the lengths that they're willing to go, and will they fight their way for recruiting. I think that's shown with Mizzou, that not only will they fight for a guy throughout the process, but afterwards with the Caden Greens and the Toriano Prides and some of those. I think it pays off now with the transfer portal, the relationships that you build then, and that's clear there from Mizzou. So I think in the last 4 or 5 years, I've said, I don't know that I've covered another program that has changed their national profile as much as Missouri, to where good recruiting, always can count on them being, 30s, 40s, that kind of thing, to now battling it out for, You look at the Jackson Cantwells and the Andrew Babalolas, and they're right there for national recruited players. And they're not just in those recruitments now. When Missouri is in one of those recruitments, you have to look back at the recent history and say, well, they're going to be dangerous here because they've proven that they can win those kind of battles.
All right. So you mentioned Andrew Babalola. I think every week since early July, I've been told, yeah, it could happen anytime, man. But we don't know where he's going, but like we think a decision's coming. This kid might commit in the middle of his sophomore year. I don't know. What's any idea what's going on with that one?
Yeah. So I'll have a little note on him coming up on the site later today too. But even back in the summer when that was being said, I was kind of saying like, yeah, that is what's being said. I'll kind of believe it when I see it. When he said first day of school, I was going, all right, maybe, first game. He's now told our staff, our guys on the ground there at our Kansas State site, like he said 1000% by his final regular season game. And I've been skeptical each step of the way. I'm inclined to believe him this time around. He seems like we're going to get this thing done. My take on it has been throughout, and I think nationally, when you listen to people who have insight into the recruitment, they've been saying Michigan or Stanford, and then Auburn kind of crept in. The intel I'm getting this week is that don't count out Mizzou. And that's from neutral sources saying, I'm not saying he's going to Missouri, but Mizzou is much more in this than it's maybe being talked about on a national level. He's never said, I want to be close to home, but I do think the distance helps Mizzou in this case. I think that, from what I understand, there's family members that may want him closer to home. I do think he said specifically that Coach Drinkwitz coming to his first game meant a lot to him. He singled that out. And, I don't think Coach Drink shows up unless he thinks he's got a shot, right? You don't show up for a no-hoper. So I'm not telling Mizzou fans to go, get an Andrew Babalola t-shirt made because he's going to be on the team. But Mizzou is more in that from very good neutral sources from what I'm hearing.
All right, I want to ask you two about Missouri's 2025 class here. We got you for a few more minutes. And I don't care if this is a kid in your area that you've talked to a lot, or maybe it's a Matt Zollers that plays somewhere else. But is there somebody you look at on Missouri's commit list thus far? They got 17 kids and say, that kid looks like a star to me.
Yeah, you know what? So I don't know about star, but I was going through some of the guys on the commit list this week. And one of the ones whose early season tape stood out to me is like, maybe we overlooked this guy a little bit, was Jason King. I thought he popped off the screen. And I thought that the things that they asked him to do, you're talking about a guy who, they're playing him way out over a slot receiver sometimes. They're walking him into the box. He's playing Mike linebacker. And I think whenever we've missed in the past, I think in the recruiting industry in general, it's always because maybe a guy just doesn't physically jump off the screen as much. Like, who can't pick out Jadeveon Clowney? So Jason King, maybe not the most like eye test passing guy, but when I turned on the film, I was like, man, this guy really makes a lot of plays, and he does it from multiple positions. He's definitely not a one-trick pony. I think Jack Lang was a great pickup. I mean, I think I covered that recruitment, and I would have at various points in that thought Michigan. And so I think that was a great win. And I think he's got NFL potential. I had a chance to see Donovan. Is it Alubade?
Alubade, from what we hear. Yes.
He's a Midwest original, from Chicago. Right. And so I've seen him a lot, and I would be shocked if he's not a major contributor at the next level. He played with Boom 7-on-7, so I saw him a bunch in that. And even I think he was a freshman when I first saw him. It's pretty obvious that's a future star and high major recruit right there.
All right, so I'm going to completely put you on the spot here, but don't worry, I've got an answer in case you struggle for this one. You have covered the state of Missouri for a long time, like you said, 20 years, something like that. Give me, I don't care if it's 1, 3, give me like the small group of guys that you've seen come out of the state of Missouri that are like, hey, if I got to put together a list, these are the guys at the top of the list.
Okay. That includes recent guys, right? So
Anytime you've been doing it.
I mean, Luther is extremely high on the list. There's going to be some recency bias here in that Luther and Ryan Wingo are two of the bigger, you would say, freaks of nature or obvious guys. Jamison Williams.
Yeah, he was really good.
Really good. And just one of the guys that you don't hear. DBs are a confident bunch. You don't hear a lot of DBs at camp admit to me after the rep, like, okay, I got to give that guy some cushion. like, okay, that guy can run. I got to back up. I had a few say that to me when I covered him. Let's see. Was there anybody else? I mean, you are definitely putting me
I'll give you my number one.
Okay.
I've never seen a 290-pound kid either run a 4.9 or return a punt in a game. And I saw Sheldon Richardson do both. And I think from a pure physical standpoint, he's the best kid I've seen in person in 21 years.
Okay. So actually, story, I didn't always have Missouri. That used to be considered our Midlands. So it was like Texas all the way up through the Dakotas. I only took on St. Louis. I'm trying to think of the first year. So right around the time that, just a few years before Brady Cook came out, I think the first year that I came through, I'm trying to remember now, it was the first group that I saw was Larry Boyd, I think Isaiah Williams, and those guys at Trinity were just coming up. So
2018, 19, somewhere in there.
So I missed Sheldon Richardson and some of the guys that came before that.
Okay. Because, Sheldon Richardson, and then, and again, obviously you didn't cover him, but watching Dorial Green Beckham play like Joplin High School was, I mean, it's like putting me out there and saying, yeah, these are the Boston Celtics. Good luck.
Yeah. So even though I didn't see Dorial, I mean, we watched him as a national staff a bunch at that point, and I saw him in the All-Star game. He played that, and it was like, yes. So the first year that I ever really did this seriously, I was just kind of getting into it in 2005. The first year that I got sent to Under Armour was 2008, I think, and Julio Jones and AJ Green were both in that game. And I thought to myself, is this normal for high school kids? And then I don't think I saw another specimen like that until Dorial at that game.
Yeah. Well, Alan, appreciate your time so much, man. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, but we want to give everybody a taste of what they're getting when we come over here. And I have a feeling they're going to be hearing from you a lot.
And I'll still come through St. I've sweated it out at Lindenwood so many years now in the almost 100-degree heat. I don't plan on stopping doing that. And so, I'll be around. Happy to answer any questions and really, really pleased to have you and the crew aboard.
The only thing I know about Lindenwood is at least there's a Dairy Queen nearby. So
there is one nearby. I forget where else I stayed. I think there might be. You're at that point at lunch, you're just grasping for whatever you can. So I think there might be a Panera Bread or something near there with Wi-Fi. So
there you go. All right, Alan, appreciate you, man. We will catch up down the road.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gabe.
All right, that is Alan Trieu, again, the Midwest recruiting. He said he didn't care. Midwest recruiting. He covers Midwest recruiting for 24/7. So we'll go with that. Sean Williams now also covers Midwest recruiting for 24/7 and multiple other places, not other networks, just other places in the country, because he is our recruiting guy. So, Sean, what's up, man? How you holding in?
Naturally, that was a harsh intro there. You just popped me on the screen, and I'm like, "There's my big ass head." So here we are.
Well, you're used to this. You know, it's not the most professional operation ever. You're just gonna have to look. I have been up now for 28 consecutive hours, so you're gonna come on the screen when I am good and ready to put you on the screen.
I think Drew put a screenshot out, and then I quote tweeted him, said, "You look excitingly sleep deprived." So there you go.
That's kind of a oxymoron, but I'll take it.
Well, it's meant to be.
All right. So let's start first off, kind of in the midst of us, making some decisions, or not really decisions. We didn't make the decision last night, guys. Sorry. But in making some moves, Missouri picked up a commitment last night So let's start there. Like, what can you tell people about Dakota Terrell? And if the answer is not much because it frankly kind of came out of nowhere, I'm cool with that answer.
Yeah, I mean, it did kind of come out of nowhere. I mean, we know he visited, for the Buffalo game earlier this year. And then, I saw that he tweeted out, hey, made my mind up, decision coming soon. So, yeah, it kind of popped up and he announced it pretty quickly after that tweet. So, but yeah, he's one of those, another tight end target. Like we kind of talked about it and we've talked about it on our site. Missouri missed out on a couple of guys in the summer. Chase Lofton, Brody Lennon, those guys. Lofton went to Florida State. Lennon went to Ohio State. They both had those guys in for official visits this summer. So they missed on some tight end guys. So they offered some new ones. Dakota Terrell was one of those guys they offered like in late July. They also offered that Jeremiah Jones, who's the Nebraska commit. They also offered that Jaden Savory kid, who is committed to Michigan State. Obviously, Jones has been on campus a couple of times in July, and I think he was in for the Boston College game as well. Terrell was in for the Buffalo game. So, yeah, I mean, Terrell's kind of an intriguing prospect. He's tall. He's like 6'7", 6'8", 220 pounds. He plays like tight end, wide receiver. He also plays defensive end for his school. But he's also, the thing that's kind of intriguing about him is he's got a basketball background. And he's actually got I think he's got like a Tulsa offer in basketball. And I think Sam Houston's offered him in basketball. And he's got some smaller programs that have offered him in basketball. So, and his recruitment kind of blew up in the spring. And, he started picking up like offers from Arkansas, Texas A&M, stuff, and places like that, I think. And then Ole Miss offered him, I think, this in September too. So, I mean, he's been picking up offers pretty lately too. So, pretty good win for Missouri. I mean, he's an Oklahoma kid, so kind of a regional kid. So, obviously, somebody that they think is a really good fit for their offensive system.
And you mentioned Jeremiah Jones, and just for everybody's knowledge, like my information is that Missouri is now certainly interested in looking at 2 tight ends in this class, which makes some sense when you look at the way things have gone lately. I mean, Tyler Stevens is leaving, Brett Norfleet is there, Jordan Harris is there, but Whit Hayford, Jude James, you see what you get out of them, but they could definitely use some youth at the position.
Yeah, we've talked about Jones a lot as maybe being the guy, and then Terrell comes in and commits. So, but we know that they still like Jones. I mean, he's been on campus twice, like we said. He was on campus in late July. That's where he picked up the offer. He's said a lot of good things about Missouri both times he's been on campus. We just caught up with him whenever he was in for the Boston College game. So, he talks very highly of Coach Cato, the whole staff. So yeah, I could see a potential flip happening there. I know he said he's going to try to come back for, I think, the Auburn game for the homecoming game. So,
yeah. So that's the tight end situation. We were just talking to Alan Trieu, and I don't know when you popped in the room and what you could hear, but he says he's not saying Missouri gets him, but he thinks Missouri is more involved with Andrew Babalola than, like, this seems to be a theme covering Mizzou recruiting. Mizzou is more involved than people outside the state of Missouri almost ever seem to say.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know they're definitely involved. I mean, he mentioned that interview they just did with their guys over at the Kansas State side who I think they were at one of his games and interviewed him after his game. And he talked pretty glowingly in Missouri, especially with Drinkwitz coming to visit him. I think he took the drink copter in for his game. And so, yeah, I mean, that makes a huge impression. Obviously, he's been there for a while. And I think the other thing that Babalola mentioned in that interview is, how Missouri took a chance. They were one of the first, like, Power 4 schools to take a chance on him. They offered him before he played his first varsity game. So they really saw the talent and what he could become early on. So I think that plays a really big factor, too. You obviously mentioned being close to home as well. So, yeah, I think it's kind of like a mixture. I think Missouri's right in there, along with like Auburn, Michigan, and I think Stanford's intriguing to him too, just because of the academics and things like that. So it'd be kind of intriguing to kind of see where it goes. I was listening to Alan's spot with you, and I know he said Babalola's kind of said, hey, he said he's going to commit at different times. It hasn't happened yet. I know in that interview he did say he was going to commit by like late October, toward the end of his season. He'll definitely have a decision made. I think another thing that was intriguing about that interview is he said he's not going to take any game day visits until he commits. And I think Auburn is one school that he's never taken a game day visit to. Whether that makes a difference in his recruiting process or not, who knows? But just throwing out some interesting facts there from the interview that Alan was referencing.
Yeah, and to Babaloola's credit, he's never given a year. Like, hey, he might commit by the first game, might commit by the last game. Nobody ever said that was 2024. We'll wait and see. We've gotten multiple questions about this, so I'm just going to pick one and throw it up on the screen. After losing Javen Boggs, what's the status of receivers? There was another question that was asking specifically about Jacob Washington and kind of what Mizzou's pursuit of him looks like.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The only one that we really know of right now is Jacob Washington that they're really going after. Of course, he's the Michigan commit from Louisiana. Missouri had him in on an official visit during June. And interestingly enough, when I talked to him after his official visit, he said Missouri was his top school. But that was before he went to Michigan. And obviously he went there for his official, ended up committing to the Wolverines. So seems like Missouri's circling back there. Washington just, he confirmed with us recently that he's still hearing from the staff, and he's planning to come back to Missouri for the Oklahoma game in November. So that'd be kind of intriguing to kind of keep an eye on. I know he was back at Michigan recently for the USC game. So, but yeah, it seems like Missouri's in a good spot. I mean, that's the only two visits he really told me about was going to that USC game at Michigan and then coming to Missouri for the Oklahoma game. So. We'll kind of see how that plays out. I know Alan had like a little bit of a note on recent Purdue decommitment. LeBron Hill, he's a kid out of Indiana near the Chicago area. I think they've made contact with him, so we'll kind of see where that goes. But obviously, Purdue just fired their offensive coordinator, and so you're going to kind of see some repercussions from that decision with guys that Graham Harrell was recruiting, and I think LeBron Hill's one of those guys. So I think there'll be maybe some more guys. I think Washington's kind of your top guy to fill that third spot at wide receiver. And you might see some more guys get offers too, so we'll see.
It just hit me. We're hitting the time where we're about to see a whole bunch of recruits named LeBron, aren't we? Like they're right all getting to like 16, 17, 8. There's going to be a whole bunch of LeBrons in college football and college basketball coming up in the next
couple time, man. And he's still playing too. So, I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
All right. So we talked receivers, tight end. That Missouri takes another receiver, takes another tight end. That puts him at 19 commitments. So it kind of lay out for fans the roadmap of what the rest of the recruiting class looks like. Position wise, not necessarily asking specific players, but position wise, what do you think they do to finish this?
Yeah, I'm definitely defensive line is a point of emphasis. They recently offered Toby Hastrup out of Texas. He's a fast rising defensive end that just started playing football this year, actually. So he's put together some pretty big numbers down there, and he's got a lot of schools that have been offering him. So Missouri jumped in the mix with him. They also offered kind of an intriguing JUCO defensive tackle called Sevick Cloud, who's an all-name team candidate. But he was a former Georgia commit coming out of high school, and then he went the JUCO route. So he's picking up some offers throughout the season. Defensive back is another point of emphasis. Safety, cornerbacks. They just recently offered Minnesota commit Zach Harden. He's been committed to Minnesota since the spring. He's a safety commit. I know Harden, kind of tough to get a read on him in terms of feedback and how interested he is in other options. I do know he took a visit to Auburn according to his Twitter account or X account, however you guys want to say that. So he's definitely interested in looking around and looking at other options. And they also offered Indiana commit Byron Bolden too, cornerback safety type prospect who's been committed to Indiana for a while. I know he told me he's interested in Missouri, so we'll see if a visit happens in that regard. And I know another Michigan commit, running back commit, Jasper Parker has kind of been mentioned as well. So another running back, a second running back to go with Morrow can be an option as well.
I mean, that gets Missouri pretty close to a 25-man class, and I guess that's probably normal. I mean, I guess we just got to get used to, 35 new players on a roster pretty much every year.
Yeah, with the new roster spots, you can go up to 105 now. So, I mean, I'm kind of curious how, teams will kind of manage that in terms of, their high school class and transfers and things like that. Will teams get to 105 max? I'm not really sure about that, at least right off the bat. But, yeah, you probably see close to 25, probably 25 commitments. I'm kind of curious to see who else they'll end up, kind of offering, now that, players are coming out with new, huddle highlights for like their first quarter of the season type thing. So there's new evaluations going out and, coaches are hitting the road and things like that. So, yeah. And we mentioned Babalola's too, another offensive line guy that they're definitely going after. Whether, and if if Babalola ends up committing somewhere else, do they go after another offensive lineman? Not sure. I think just adding Babalola in the class is kind of like a great icing on the cake piece. So we'll see how that kind of plays out if he goes somewhere else there.
All right, hey, you guys do want to let you know, banner on the screen there. Next guest gonna be about 10 minutes away. Probably Tom Lloyd, 24/7 director of recruiting, going to join me next. Sean, kind of want to finish up with you on this, and then we'll let you get about your day. Go back. I'm sure plenty of stuff's going on the message board right now, so let you tend to that. But ask Jarod this. I'll ask Drew this. I kind of told everybody at the beginning why I was excited about this move, what attracted me, like in your role covering recruiting, why is this? I mean, you guys were not obligated to follow me. It was important to me that if I was going to move, everybody was going to move. But why'd you kind of think, hey, yeah, it seems like a thing that'll work out all right?
Yeah, I think for me, just
other than you just like to hang out with me on YouTube and talk to me a lot.
I'm not really drawing up the YouTube numbers after, you're kind of squeezing me between like Alan and then Tom's coming on after me. So I think the YouTube ratings are down right now, but anyway.
Some people are pretending to work right now. I think that's what it is.
Right. Yeah. No, with me, I've always been intrigued with 247 just because, any like recruiting events, like big things, especially during the spring and stuff I go to, and even in the fall, there's always 247 staff there, whether it's national or team site guys. So I know the network's pretty strong, and I've kind of built relationships with some of those guys already. So I think to have kind of the national coverage that we do, I think the thing that really I think is cool about 247 is you mentioned that and talked about it with Alan is to kind of separate the recruiting staff with the scouting staff. So they kind of keep that separate thing. So, you got to kind of like that's a really good formula, I think, for kind of fair and balanced ratings. And also, to have the recruiting guys be able to do their coverage and do their due diligence with, not having to sweat, having to satisfy coaches and players and parents and things like that too. So I think that really goes a long way. And obviously, so far, so good on the communication part and having people help us out. The transition was pretty smooth last night, and it continues to be smooth this morning. And I know we're going to get a lot of help from the national guys in terms of updates and guys that are, quite frankly, they might not want to talk to me because I'm just
Right.
I'm just a lonely 247, PowerMizzou guy. But they might want to talk to. They'll definitely probably want to talk to Alan or Tom because they're national guys. So
there you go. There you go. When you said this morning, I looked up at the clock on my computer and I said, "Holy Mother of God! It is 9:22 a.m. What's like? There's a lot of day left, man." So, John, we're gonna let you go hang out with the folks on the message board, and appreciate you, man. We'll be in touch.
All right, see you guys.
All right, that's Sean Williams in the green room. Our next big guest, if I can get a thumbs up, if Tom can hear me and is ready to go, we've got it. We're going to pop him on the stage. This is Tom Lloyd. So, Tom, I was joking with Alan. Like, it's been a busy 24 hours. My research might not all have gone into titles. So I see that you are 24/7 Sports National Analyst. I was going to go with 24/7 Director of Recruiting. Czar, King, what do you prefer?
Definitely not that. And honestly, like Alan said, like I'm not a big titles guy either, but we did get rid of the director title. It was just not something that we wanted. It's really our big thing since I've come over, and really right before that, when I joined the national team in January, was I just want to create this atmosphere and this vibe of teamwork and working together across the national team, both scouting and then recruiting, but also across the team site. And I obviously coming from the team site, covering Notre Dame for as long as I did, and North Carolina and Florida State before that, I'm just all about the team, and I want us to work together. Communication is a big thing for me. So obviously, Gabe, you and I are going to reach out plenty of time. Your entire team and I will reach out and stay in touch a lot. But that's just what we're creating right now at 24/7. It's all about team. It's, I kind of feel like we're in a locker room and everybody's kind of vibing and getting on the same page. And it's been fun. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but this first 9 months, for me in this role has been tremendous. It's been a lot of fun. I'm all about lifting up the younger guys that I've been doing this a long time. And I want to shed a brighter light on, guys across our network that do a really good job, and we're loaded at 24/7 Sports. So for me, that's the biggest thing, team, and just kind of all kind of banging to the same drum and just kind of working hard, but working together.
So, a lot of guys, we were talking to Alan, he's the Midwest. I know you guys have everything divided up, a lot, certain areas. So as the national analyst, like, can you kind of tell our people, like, for lack of a better way to put it, just kind of define your role, like your day-to-day, week-to-week job as far as covering these kids goes?
Yeah, so Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky is technically my region. But as soon as I came on board, I was told that, a lot of my focus needs to be on the top 100, top 150 kids in the country. And that's really what I'm focused on as well. So I'm big on relationships, and I love churning out content and getting to know these guys. And you're going to see that quickly on the Missouri site. I mean, that's going to be our focus. And it was funny because I used to joke with our guys how as soon as I came on board, I would talk to guys like Matt Zollers, Donovan Lubide, all these guys. I've had all this scoop and intel on Missouri recruiting because they were doing so well. And I'm like, we don't really have a place for it. So it would kind of go unnoticed. So if you guys want to go back to their profiles, you'll see some really good content that our national team has produced on Missouri recruiting. But that's just kind of the funny thing. It's just like, it was so nice. I was talking to Joel and Adam Stanko and all these guys about like, hey, we got to find a spot for Missouri. And he's like, well, I might have an answer for you. So obviously finding out that you guys were coming over eventually was music to my ears, because now there's a landing spot. Obviously posted the recruiting scoop piece last night at midnight. It's just so nice to have such a passionate fan base ready to just kind of get after it. And we are so excited to have PowerMizzou with us.
Excitement is mutual. It's definitely been a really fun, somehow only 9 hours and 26 minutes. Seems like 3 days, but whatever. But yeah, Tom mentioned it, guys. If you're watching, hopefully you're already subscribed. If you're not, the information is running across the bottom of the screen. We're going to charge you $26.85 this year. I know, like, dig in your couch cushions, skip the you don't even have to skip a latte, just skip a regular coffee. But Tom posted a whole bunch of really good stuff right when we went live at midnight last night. He's got a full notebook up, and I think we've got a story from Brian Doan on Matt Zollers up there now. I haven't been on the site in a couple hours because I've been hanging out here with you guys. But Tom, wanted to ask you kind of a national role. What's your view? And I asked Alan kind of a similar thing, but what's your view been of this kind of rise of Missouri? Because I've done this for a long time, and most of the time when it came to Missouri recruiting, it would be, if you talk to a national guy, like, yeah, Dorial Green Beckham comes along, a Sheldon Richardson comes along, it's here and there. But national recruiting guys generally aren't talking about Missouri a whole lot. That's changed in the last 3 or 4 years under Eli Drinkwitz.
Without question. I mean, we're just looking at the 2025 class. I love what they're doing. Matt Zollers, Donovan Lubide, Lamont Rogers. I mean, Jack Lang. I could not be higher on somebody like Jack Lang. I mean, we joke about kind of staying in our lane, how we have our scouting team and our recruiting team. When I look at Jack Lang, I see he's a guy that kind of the same way I felt about Joe Alt covering Notre Dame a long time ago. Like, if he ends up being a first-round pick down the road, it wouldn't shock me. Andrew Ivins may scoff at that right now, but that's really the truth. I really look at Jack Lang and I see a guy that could eventually be a day one guy. I mean, this class, and Lamont Rogers, you could make an argument that he's an even better prospect right now. So again, just looking at 4 guys on top of the class, it's loaded. I really like what Missouri's doing across the trail. They're recruiting not just slam dunk guys. They're recruiting guys. They're going toe to toe to beat a Georgia for Matt Zollers or whatever the case may be. So, and then Texas A&M and Oklahoma to get Lamont Rogers, and a bunch of schools across the country to get Lubide. So again, love what they're doing. I like the energy. I like the passion. Talking to these guys about the staff, it's clear that they're working kind of like how we're trying to do it 24/7. They're working like one like-minded role and effort. It's been fun. And like I said, it's just so nice to have a landing spot to provide really good, top-notch Missouri Tigers coverage.
And look, I have been saying for a year and a half, people who do what we do should be a little more honest and transparent. So I'm prefacing this question with, NIL is a part of it. Let's not pretend that everybody just loves the brotherhood and the family atmosphere, right? NIL is a part of it, and we know that going in. Beyond that, when you do talk to some of these kids and maybe their coaches and their parents, what do they like about Drinkwitz and his staff and the way they recruit?
The one thing that continues to come up with them is the culture, the family atmosphere. And again, you hear this at a lot of schools, because when you talk to kids, they're going to give you the similar comments. It was great. I had a good time, this and that. But like something about the culture that Drink is building, and the family atmosphere and just the togetherness, the bond, it's clearly resonating with these guys. And it's, obviously Javen Boggs was a one-off, and that was tough losing him. But, talking to sources in the last 48 hours to put this recruiting piece together and talk about the class. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things about, Lamont Rogers that has them slightly concerned, but push comes to shove. I asked point blank and they feel like he's going to stick. So I just think that what they're building is they're doing a lot of the right things to keep these guys not only committed, but locked in moving forward. And that's the most important thing. Again, just going back to when I covered Notre Dame, they didn't suffer a ton of decommitments because they were doing a good job of like, hey, if you want to be here, take your visits, take your time, and then make a decision. Your spot will be here, but we want you when you're ready to be here. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that's what Missouri's doing, is they're trying to bring everybody together under the same family tree, the same vibe, and they want them when they're ready to commit. They're not pressuring kids to make a decision when they're not ready, which obviously usually backs up and, forces decommitments and things like that. So I like what they're doing. The culture is obviously top notch. Personally, I was talking to somebody the other day about getting up to Missouri because they really want to go check it out and see it all firsthand. So pretty fired up. So yeah, you can definitely look for me to take a trip up there, potentially for the Auburn game, but at some point before the end of the season.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and volunteer Jarod Hamilton's apartment that you can stay at. I haven't cleared it with my wife. I don't know if you're allowed like in our extra bedroom, but I'm sure you could stay with Jarod. It'd be fine.
Appreciate it.
Going to ask you the same thing I asked Alan, and you've talked about some of the individual kids you like, but on Missouri's commitment list, if you look at this list of 17 kids, is there somebody that you look at and say, I think that kid's a star in college football?
It's hard for me to pick just one. Obviously, I mentioned Zollers, Alubade, Lang, Rogers. I'm kind of just looking down the list. I've seen Charles Bass multiple times on the 7-on-7 circuit, and that dude is as close to a shutdown corner as you'll find. I mean, he is just a do-it-all kind of guy. So a lot to like there. Sean Terry is extremely explosive. Somebody called him the Yak King. He's got viral plays left and right. He's a guy that I'm excited about. But going back to the top, I mean, for me, I've seen him a million times. Donovan Alubade, he's a tremendous playmaker. I know he was a little banged up over the last couple of weeks, but he will be back. I touched base with him last week. He should be back this week on the field. So I'm very excited. The guy, he may not blow you away with his testing numbers and 40 time, whatever the case may be, but he gets separation. He catches everything thrown his way. I've had multiple viral clips from just shooting video when he's on the 7-on-7 circuit. He's a tremendous talent, tremendous kid. I mean, he's a guy that is going to step into the Missouri offense and play right away. He's a difference maker, and I love what he brings to the table.
All right, kind of flip side of that, those guys are obviously even kind of casual Missouri fans know mostly those names. If you go further down the commit list, is there a guy that maybe he's not the 4-star kid, maybe he's not a top 247 kid, but you look at and say, this is a guy, whether it's, I don't care if it's rising the rankings or just a guy that I look at this kid and I think there might be a little bit more there as a college football player than maybe people are thinking right now.
Well, obviously I mentioned Terry and Bass as two guys that are kind of stock up for me, guys that I like a lot, but let me just go to the experts. I mean, I talked to Missouri staffers over the last couple of days, and the guy they keep talking about is Jason King. They think he's a guy that had committable SEC offers. He's a big-time prospect. He's a do-it-all guy. I think Alan was even talking about him. So He's a guy that, probably a stock-up guy. If you're asking people in the Missouri office who they think is the most underrated guy that we just haven't nailed on our end in terms of the scouting side of things for Ivins and Cooper and the rest of the guys, they're saying Jason King. They think the guy's coming out of St. Louis, a guy out of that high school in particular. they shine at the next level. And they think Jason King is one that's going to surprise a lot of people. If you just look at it, and he's an 86 overall rating, 3-star guy, don't be surprised if he's an early contributor at Missouri and a guy that does a lot of great things.
Perfect. Last thing for you, Tom. Look, I'm going to spend the next however long pitching these people on why they need to follow our team and come sign up over here. But a big part of that is all the support, the network. So for the Missouri fans who are watching or maybe are going to listen later, can you give them the pitch on what makes this recruiting team, like, what stand out in this business? Everybody you've got it 24/7.
Look, I don't know how it was at your last stop and how things, there's obviously talented people that work there. And obviously it's a long-standing tradition of quality work, but I know what we're doing here, what we're building at 24/7. It's special, and it's been that way for as long as I can remember. I mean, I've been doing this for whatever it is, 15 years now, covering multiple teams. And this is the most fun that I've had really over the last couple of years, but really since January, of just kind of connecting with guys and bringing guys together. It's like, we don't have that director title. I know you wanted to call me that initially, but for me, like, I'm just taking this new role, trying to bring people together and create one voice so we're all on the same page. And you're going to quickly see that on the Missouri site, because you're going to see a ton of content. We're going to be working together from a national and a team site perspective. Everybody's going to, day in and day out, it might seem like a light day, but that light day is only going to have 3 to 4 to 5 stories on it on a random Wednesday or a random Sunday, because everybody is doing everything they can to work together. So I may get to Missouri site scoop, and I'm not going to run to post it, because I want to build up some of your guys, and I want to build up the other national guys and make sure everybody's got a voice. And that's really what we're about, man. It's camaraderie. It's just kind of growing together. And it's been fun, man. I can't tell you enough. And the one thing we do here that we pride ourselves on is the message board. So that community, I know Clint Cosgrove, when he was joking, about coming over and talking about popping into the layer as much as he can. I mean, that's how we are going to be. So it's never going to be a case where, man, I couldn't get a hold of Tom, or I can't get a hold of Alan. Why don't they respond to our messages? That is not going to be the case. We are all over every message board community. And I think that may be what separates us from every other site, any other network, is just because of the fact that we care enough to make sure that you guys are just hanging out with us on a day-to-day basis. We're just having drinks, talking ball, and we are always accessible, literally 24/7. So reach out anytime. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us in the PMs, but it's going to be a fun ride. I'm glad to have you guys here, and we could not be more excited about the future for both Missouri, PowerMizzou, and also 24/7.
Yeah, we're excited. Hey, if I knew hanging out, having drinks was an option. I mean, it's 9:37 in the morning, but I haven't slept. I don't know what time it is. We could have done that this morning.
Anytime you're ready, my friend.
All right, Tom, have a good one, man. Really appreciate
Thanks,
your
guys.
time,
Appreciate
and we'll talk to you.
Thanks, Gabe.
Tom Loy, national recruiting analyst for 24/7. Again, just really appreciate all these voices, and this is what we're trying to do throughout. Look, guys, we're a little over halfway through this thing. I think Tom was our 5th, maybe 6th guest. We've got more coming up. Like I said, I put on the screen there, Richard Johnson, CBS Sports Split Zone Duo, covers college football for CBS, is going to come on next. We're going to transition into a little bit of basketball, the last third of the show. Want to take just a minute while we're here. Look, we've been hovering around 300 people since we started this thing an hour and 40 minutes ago. Probably not all the same 300. Some of you coming in, some of you are going out. Want to ask you while you're here, like the show, subscribe to the channel. What subscribing to the channel is going to do for you is you are going to know when we go live. You're not going to have to sit around and wait. You're going to get a notification, hey, going live at such and such time, or just went live, jump in and watch. So if you do those two things, it really helps get the word out to people what we're doing here. And look, guys, I'm not going to lie to you. We're not usually going to do this for 3 hours. It's a special deal this morning, right? It's usually closer 30 minutes, an hour, maybe after games, maybe we go an hour and a half. But if you hit the notifications, subscribe to the channel, all that, you're going to find out what we're doing. And obviously our main focus can be on the website, but hey, we like to hang out here every now and again too. And we just continue to roll through. I've wanted to use this word all day, our cavalcade of guests. So next in line, Richard Johnson, national college football reporter, CBS Sports Split Zone Duo podcast. Richard, thanks for taking a minute, man.
It's great. It's great to be here, and welcome to the network. Welcome to 247.
So I'm going to hit you. You are one of the more recent additions, but you've still been here way longer than I have, which is now 9.5 hours. So everybody, I ask, the first thing is just, can you kind of tell our subscribers, the Missouri fans watching, like from what you do, the national college football, what kind of coverage they're going to get here, not just at 24/7, but also CBS?
Yeah, I think the beauty of it is the mix in coverage that we have. Obviously, team centric. All of your Mizzou fans, I'm sure, locked in with you on Saturdays. But look, Missouri is more than just nationally relevant right now on a college football stage. I mean, squarely in the playoff race. We're going to be talking about them all fall. And so I think what's going to be interesting for your readers and your viewers and your subscribers is going to be sort of seeing the whole national landscape and taking that in and seeing where Mizzou fits in that. And so because we're frankly going to be talking a lot about Mizzou all fall, I think the beauty of what we do on the national side and the national level is the power and the cross landscape that we have. And Mizzou fits in that. And so, come over on the CBS Sports side and the 247 national side and see what we got to say about the Tigers.
So I always say, literally, it takes all my energy to cover one team, what I like to think is relatively well, right? So when your job is, you just cover national college football. Like if these fans, do you pretty much go in every week and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at? What do you kind of have freedom to pick and choose what you want to do, or how's it work?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's sometimes you wake up with a plan, and then, sometimes you wake up thinking you have a plan, and then somebody texts you and says that a UNLV quarterback is transferring in the middle of the night, and because he's out $100,000. So, no 2 days are the same. Especially as we get later in the season, we start getting into some of the portal stuff, the coaching cycle stuff that starts to dominate. And then obviously when we get to the playoff, we're talking about real ball. But right now, I spend the first 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season, frankly, just trying to get a handle on who's good, who's playing well, who I want to see, who I want to go visit, perhaps, who's a surprise, for instance. What are things we didn't think were going to happen? I'm sure your Missouri fan base and your Missouri readership will that, I thought Kansas was going to be pretty good, and they're a big disappointment. So it's things like that. You have to reevaluate some of the things you came into the season thinking, and you have to sort of level set. But then you get nights like Saturday night where Alabama plays Georgia in a game for all time, and it really is worth it how helter-skelter things can often seem.
We have yet again survived the latest, oh my God, college football is ruined and we're never going to love the games again. But you mentioned the expectations of the school over to the West. So I want to ask you kind of same thing I asked Bud Elliott at the beginning of this. Give me your expectation of Missouri at the end of August compared to what your opinion of Missouri here is at the end of September.
Well, it's about where I thought they'd be. BC and Vandy were not the teams that were going to challenge Missouri as far as where they want to go this season. I figured they could handle that. My question is October 26th. What happens then? When you have to go to Tuscaloosa, that's the measuring stick. That's your season. And then does that result, whatever happens, win or lose, does that result beat you the next week against Oklahoma, right? An Oklahoma team that I'm sure older Missouri fans I don't want to say are going to want to beat more than Alabama, but the history.
Oh no, absolutely. Missouri fans will get that win.
Okay. I didn't want to speak out of turn there, but yes, I'm sure Missouri fans are going to want that Oklahoma game even more than the Alabama game. So it's going to be funny. It's interesting. That's really your season right there, and more than just about playoff aspirations and potential playoff seeding, a potential SEC championship, dark horse run. Like there's some pretty intense, obviously emotional baggage, I guess, for lack of a better term, especially with that Oklahoma game.
All right, let me push back on that. I think the Alabama game is the least important game on Missouri's schedule.
Okay.
Because I think you can go lose it by 14, 17, whatever. And if you do what you should do in the other games, you're still a playoff team. If you go 11-1, 10-2, it gets dicey for Missouri, Ole Miss, teams like that. But Missouri is a 3-point underdog this week. If that game's in Columbia, they're a 3-point favorite, probably. I think they'll be favored over Oklahoma. I think Auburn's awful. I think UMass is awful. I know Mississippi State's awful. And Arkansas is whatever it is. So to me, I look at it and go, if you can pick one loss, if you're Eli Drinkwitz, just give me the L in Tuscaloosa. And then that's a good loss. I don't put my team at risk by, yeah, but you had that South Carolina loss, or, you had that Texas A&M loss.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's you can't pick up a dumb loss going forward, right? South Carolina, defensive front at South Carolina, that's going to test you a little bit. You know what I mean? Oklahoma, like the defense isn't the problem for Oklahoma. Obviously, they can't score if you play 6 quarters, but the defense is not. So that's going to be a sufficient challenge. And then Arkansas, that could get screwy because rivalry game, at least rivalry week, I should say. So, you never know. But yes, I would agree with you that you can't pick up a silly loss here. I don't think Missouri has that kind of margin because Missouri does not have the benefit of the doubt that Georgia has. Like Georgia could lose to Tennessee in a few weeks. Right. And, you'd still sort of give them the benefit of the doubt because they are what they are, and they could still sneak in as like a 10 seed, for instance. But I don't think Missouri is going to have that margin.
Basically, Missouri can't do what Ole Miss just did.
Right. 100%.
I think they're the same team, same season, very similar schedule. And Ole Miss now, I mean, if they go lose in Baton Rouge in 2 weeks, they're done. We're not talking about them at all. So, look, I gotta kind of promote the story you wrote a couple weeks ago, or at least co-wrote, Billy Napier. And I don't know how better to say it than what the hell's going on in Gainesville.
Great question. I ask myself that almost daily. I'm a University of Florida alum, and so frankly, I have plenty of ties there. I have plenty of folks, plenty of friends from college that I haven't talked to in years. Gave me a call after that story came out. Parents, friends, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a proper mess, and the only way to at least hold the Wolves at bay is to continue to win football games. They play UCF this week, and Florida doesn't lose to UCF. Well, they might on Saturday, and that's
Florida
a problem.
Loses to a lot of teams. Florida doesn't lose to these.
Exactly, that's a problem, and that is where they're at right now. If they lost to the Mississippi State team that both of us think is pretty terrible, they were going to have issues. I think if they lose to UCF this week, they're going to have issues, especially coming off a bye week. Right, the through line of the biggest issue for me with Billy Napier's tenure at Florida is how unprepared they often look in big spots. Billy Napier is supposed to be a details guy. That's what everybody on his staff talks about. It's what Scott Strickland, the athletic director, talks about. That's what people at Louisiana talk about. He's a details guy, the little things. Florida has consistently let the details lapse over Billy Napier's tenure. So you've had a bye week to iron out the wrinkles, the considerable wrinkles that you showed the first 4 weeks of the season. The only 2 teams you beat are an FCS team and a team that is frankly going to finish last in the SEC or second to last. So you've had your bye week and you had a couple cupcake games. So now what? Because there's a team coming into your stadium Saturday night that very much wants to beat you. UCF and Gus Malzahn want to make their stamp on the state that it's not just a big 3, Florida, Miami, and Florida State. It's a big 4 with UCF. So they're going to be all kinds of motivated. Florida has to find a way to win that game, and they have to find a way to not beat themselves, which they have done time and time again under Billy Napier.
All right, so we'll bring it back to Missouri, but connected here because, obviously Eli Drinkwitz, one of the names mentioned in your story, and I will just tell everybody, listen, the way I've put this is I think Florida absolutely, he's on Florida's list. Whether he's 1 or 2 or 3, whatever, from everything I've read, kind of depends on who gets to make the decision, and nobody really knows that. But he's on the list. Florida's absolutely going to call. Whether it gets to if he has a decision to make or not, I don't know. And if it does get to where he has a decision to make, I'm not at all sure that decision is what everybody thinks it would be, right? We now live in a world where it's not that hard to argue Missouri and Ole Miss are on similar footing, equal jobs as Florida. I know that's insane to say 5 years ago in college football, but given the environment now, like, I don't think that's a crazy statement.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a timing element to these kinds of things. Like, because if Missouri is hosting a home playoff game, and let's say they win it, then Eli Drinkwitz is tied up until New Year's. And so he's tied up through the early signing period, which, quite frankly, is the most key factor in whoever Florida's going to hire if they get rid of Billy Napier. And so that's the thing you have to consider. It's a thing Eli Drinkwitz is going to have to consider. You know, who would Missouri get to backfill? That's another question, of course. But yeah, I think that for Eli Drinkwitz or anybody taking this Florida job, you have to evaluate the structure of the alignment, which is the basis of that story. The basis of that story is there are some people who are not too happy with athletic director Scott Strickland, which I understand, but Florida's running a presidential search right now that's going to last deep into next year. If you're an athletic director candidate worth your salt, you might not want to come into a university system where you don't know who your boss is going to be for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. And so if you get rid of Billy Napier and athletic director Scott Strickland, then if I'm a head coaching candidate, I don't know who my boss is, and I don't know who my boss's boss is. And so there's just so many alignment issues that it's for Florida, it's the worst possible time to not have a head coaching situation that you can at least park for a year or two while you figure out the broader administration landscape at the university, because there are other university side decisions that have to be made. Dean of law school, dean of engineering, all that sort of stuff that doesn't even have anything to do with athletics, but does tie up the board of trustees and people at the highest level of the university system. So yeah, you know, like we talked about, Florida's got a lot of issues. And if I'm any potential head coaching candidate, I got to vet that out with my representation. I got to vet out how aligned the collective structure is going to be, because I got to find a way to pay players and build a roster. Might have to do it quickly, you know, and there are going to be plenty of people who are going to want to come and get my quarterback, DJ Lagway, who are going to want to come and get my chief playmaker in Trey Wilson. Can we keep those guys, or am I going to have to rapidly replace those guys day one in the job? So if I'm Eli Drinkwitz, if I'm Lane Kiffin, if I'm whoever, there's a lot of things to vet with this Florida situation, because, you know, it's not as settled as you'd like to think for a school of its stature.
Well, here's the beautiful idiocy of the sport we've chosen to spend our lives following. We're talking about, should we spend $26 million to make a guy leave when the guys we really want to replace him might not be available, so we might take our third or fourth choice? I mean, it's insanity what we do every day. Richard, to wrap up, kind of look, a lot of people know where to find your stuff. I already listened to the Split Zone Duo, but for maybe Mizzou fans who are just coming over here and haven't poked around a lot, like, where's the best place to watch you, read you, listen to you?
Yeah, listen to me, Split Zone Duo, podcast I do with Alex Kirshner, Stephen Godfrey. We have a great time on Substack.com/SED. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at RJ_CFB. You can watch me on CBS Sports Network, CBS Sports HQ. I do a lot of stuff on there, especially on Saturdays on CBS Sports HQ. And then you can read me on CBSSports.com.
Perfect, man. Appreciate you taking some time this morning. We're fired up to be over here and be able to kind of leverage what you and all the national guys over here do.
We're pumped to have you guys. Thanks, Gabe.
All right, Richard, have a good one. Richard Johnson, CBS Sports and Split Zone Duo. As he said, he writes, he podcasts, he's on YouTube. Nice enough to spend 15, 20 minutes with us here this morning. As a number of guys have been, we are nearing the 2/3 mark of this show, guys. Almost 10 o'clock Central Time. If it goes longer than that, it goes longer than that. But we've just been rolling guests through all morning long. I want to thank Bud Elliott. Jarod Hamilton had to be here. Sean Williams had to be here. Tom Lloyd didn't have to be. Alan True didn't have to be. Richard Johnson didn't have to be. So appreciate all of those guys and, being a part of the show. We are going to have plenty of other things coming up throughout the show. We still have, I'm counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guests left. I have a hard time counting. I think it's 5. Still have 5 guests coming your way. And again, I've given these guys windows, just in general terms. If a few of them last a few minutes longer, a few of them last a little less, that's fine. But we just want to give you guys a taste for everything you are going to get now that we are here on the 24/7 Sports Network, part of their coverage, obviously tied in with CBS. I want to answer a couple questions about your subscriptions or the promos we are running real quick. Saw somebody earlier ask about Paramount Plus. So here's the deal. If you join on a promo, you don't get Paramount Plus for free. Like, we are giving you the site for $26. We can't also give you Paramount Plus for $26, right? But when your subscription renews, whether that's 12 months from now, when you are paying full price, then you will have the option on your subscription page to add Paramount Plus. So even if next year the price goes from $26 to $99, well, then you're going to have the option to have Paramount Plus in there and add that. Somebody was asking about, can they still get 70% off on Friday? Here's what I can promise you guys. For our first 72 hours on the site, so we started at midnight Tuesday, right? So midnight Thursday. For our first 72 hours, you are going to get 75% off, which is $26.85 a year. Beyond that, I don't know. Like, could it be extended? Sure, it could be extended. Could it be extended at a lower rate? Sure. What I can tell you is if you sign up today, tomorrow, Thursday, you're going to get 75% off the site. Beyond that, kind of wait and see. Daniel Grove has asked, does 247 have an app? There isn't an app. I'll be honest, guys. Go to the message board, like save that to your homepage, or go to the front page, save that to your homepage. It's the same thing as an app. The mobile web works. It's great. I've used it on my phone. It's easy to navigate. So there's not like this one button, but just whatever browser you use on your phone, Chrome, Safari, whatever it is, just keep a window open. And all you got to do is open it. It's right there. I mean, it is nonstop open on my phone. It's probably never going to be closed again for however long I'm here. It's probably why my phone battery dies 17 times a day. But no app, but things just as good. I would encourage you, if you have questions, there's multiple threads on our message boards. The 24/7 people have been phenomenally communicative. That was big words. I'm pretty impressed with myself there. A lot of the people, guys and girls, whose names you're not probably ever going to hear, right? Because they're not the front facing. They're not necessarily on the podcast. They're not writing the stories that you're reading. But they're the people who make this whole thing go. I'm telling you, they were up with us guys till 3:00 last night. I got the first text from one of them at about 5:30 this morning. So they didn't get any more sleep than we did. They have said over and over the last few weeks, this is as important to us as it is to you guys. So they are going to do everything they can to make your experience fantastic on our website. So there are multiple threads teaching you how to do everything, answering your questions. You can email me at PowerMizzou@gmail.com anytime. I can get your questions, your concerns, whatever, in the right hands, and we will get that taken care of. So hang on one second. I've got to return a text to a guest. Sorry, I know this is great podcasting, but I absolutely cannot talk and write at the same time right now after last night. Okay, so there we go. Text sent. We are going to have coming up next. Our next guest is it's going to be a name that frankly probably you're going to say, hang on, I don't know who that is, and that's okay. He is one of these kind of behind the scenes guys to some extent. Adam Stanko is in charge of the video team at 24/7. It's one of the things that really excited me about 24/7 and their pitch to me way back in February. And then we did it again over the summer. After we had kind of agreed that this is what we were going to do, we came back down and just saw things a little bit more in depth. And some of the stuff that Adam showed me is super exciting for us, should be super exciting for you guys. He's going to be popping on here with us in the next couple minutes. And frankly, I'm going to just let him talk about it, fully explain what the video stuff is on 24/7 side and how it's going to benefit you guys as subscribers, not just to our site, but to this entire network. And hey, I do see him in the green room. Adam, if you just want to like wave at me or something, so I know you can hear me and I can pop you up. Perfect. Right on time. Adam Stanko. So I have introduced everybody here with, I didn't really have time to brush up on titles. I'm just going to let you tell everybody what your own job is. That's easier for me.
Okay, that works. VP of content for 24/7 Sports.
Okay, there you go. VP of content. So he is in charge of everything. Adam, right before you popped in, I was telling people that one of the things that most excited us about this move was all the video stuff you guys already do and have planned. So for, our subscribers or potential subscribers that are watching, I wonder if you could just kind of pitch them almost honestly the way you pitch me about, hey, here's everything that you guys can get out of this from the video side of things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing for us at 24/7 is just really trying to upgrade everything it's really happened in this industry from a video perspective for a long time. And so for us, that's a bevy of shows, video on the website, video on social, which we're always thinking about with intentionality. In terms of the talent level we have, it's unmatched really between all the analysts. I mean, obviously you've seen a bunch of what we have to offer on the recruiting side, basketball, football. But in addition to that, the hosting capabilities of Emily Proud, who's outstanding. We have the 105 show, which airs on the YouTube channel. Cooper Patagna, Andrew Ivins. We have so much talent in the database. But then in addition to that, it's really about a collaborative effort between not just what we can offer through our 24/7 Sports channels, but also our collaboration with CBS Sports. And I think that's significant. And so showing up on CBS Sports Network, our college football show for 24/7 Sports does that on Fridays. The 105 is there on Mondays. CBS Sports HQ, collaborating with them, has been terrific. And that also means that talent from the CBS Sports group comes over on our side. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Josh Pate. He's always watching, and I'm sure he's in the chat somewhere. So, especially since he knows that I'm hopping on here. So, but obviously Josh has built a monster. I think there you go. So see, someone's controlling our YouTube. That's not from me directly.
They're watching. I know they're watching. So I told everybody we got to behave for these 3 hours. Like we can be morons maybe the other 21 hours, but these 3 hours we got to be good.
It's fine. But I think the thing is that for us for a long time, Gabe, the idea of getting involved in the Missouri market, it was a non-starter. I tweeted that earlier today. We just couldn't even think about getting involved. And it was something that was brought up on weekly calls. And obviously, as the football program over the last few years under Drink has just grown, and you just see the recruiting in the state of Missouri and the influence they've had in what happens at that school. As it's grown, it's been this sort of big miss for us. It's this blind spot that we've had, and we're aware of it. But it just was never worth it to make an investment in that market. And so adding you now to the video collection and your team, I mean, we just couldn't be more excited about what's happening today. In fact, I was just on a call with HR for good reasons. And wasn't anything you said.
All right. He's been here 10 hours. We got to talk about this guy.
Yeah, exactly. But he even, it's Happy Mizzou Day. I'm hearing that already. So, everyone's feeling that way. Happy PowerMizzou Day, and that's the feeling around the office right now.
So all these different, CBS Sports Network, HQ, all the different, Pate Show and the Cover 3 guys are on YouTube, and all this. Like, it obviously there are 100 different places to watch. Like, is there kind of a hub for, like, what's the best way for these fans to consume the most content they can, video and written, frankly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, obviously you're, just being on PowerMizzou, you're going to get your fair share of video content that's really going to show up in a major way. And Gabe, I mean, I think that was one of the things we talked about really early on, was the idea that we can really enhance what you're providing from a video standpoint. You're already doing it. And then, sort of with our different tentacles, and not just the recruiting people, but Sean and Jarod, like, their content showing up on the video side too, and the things you're talking about. But in addition to that, I'd say to subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel is a great place to go. Be a part of our social channels where, again, there's different content taking place. Obviously, subscribe to Pate's show. So I think in general, there's a bunch of places where you can go, but I would say it starts with the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. There's a bunch of things that we're doing on there from a recruiting standpoint, college football, college basketball show. There's just really a lot that we have to offer that I think goes deeper than, like I've said, anyone's really tried to in the industry before and hasn't done to the level that we feel like we're doing it right now.
Are we allowed to talk about, is there a trip happening this weekend where you might run into some Missouri fans?
Yes. I would love to meet some Missouri fans. So I'll be in College Station for the Missouri-Texas A&M game. I'll be there along with Josh Pate, producer Jesse from the Pate show as well. We'll be down there. So absolutely come say hello. I can't promise free gas. I don't know. I'd have to talk to Josh, run that by the powers that be at Quick Trip. But yeah, it's going to be great. But yeah, I would love to meet fans and really answer questions. The question for us is always, how do we get better? I mean, we talk about that with the producer group, our production team, which I think is best in the business here. But we talk about that every day. How do we continue to improve? And so that's the big thing I'd want to hear from fans. And just reach out to me, whether it's, on Twitter. I have my email, my personal email link in my Twitter bio, which is probably one of the dumbest things you could possibly do.
Just put your cell phone number up there.
Yeah, exactly. I make myself way too accessible, as my wife tells me all the time. So, but I would say that I welcome feedback, because we want to know how we can get better and serve the fans. And I'm telling you, Gabe, you and I have talked about it a bunch, but we couldn't be more excited about this move. I can't believe you're running on nearly 30 hours of no sleep. That's insane. But it shows
I'll be fine. I'll be fine until our second live show ends at 8:00 tonight, and I'm out after that. So, like, I'm just telling anybody, news happens after 8:00. I mean, this goes for many nights. If news happens after 8:00, somebody else is going to have to be in charge of that.
Last night, was it with the group drinking? Was it champagne, or was Yingling mixed in there, or how did we handle it?
No, it was champagne. It was champagne brought by, I'm just going to pop them on the screen because Drew got the champagne. Drew, I'm sure it was the finest bottle at, the Phillips across the street.
Yeah. It was about a $12 bottle of Corbel. So very, very highbrow stuff there.
It was phenomenal. At 3:00 in the morning, it absolutely did the trick. So, Adam, appreciate you, man. Enjoy Kyle Field, and I'm sure that some of our people might find you and Pate and harass you a little bit.
Would love it. Thanks so much, Gabe. So pumped.
All right,
Drew.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate him and Adam and the team. Truly, the reason we're here, guys. I mean, it was the people that sold us and on their plan, and just people we wanted to work with, and so wanted to get Adam on and have him give you guys a little bit of an idea of what you can get out of this. And now we turn to Drew. And you know him. You knew Sean. You knew Jarod, so we don't have to go through this whole introduction and guess at his title and all that. Drew, you got what amount of sleep last night?
I think I got about an hour or two. Not very much. I think because I stayed up with you a little bit longer since you were at my place. I didn't want to make you sit there by yourself.
It would have been fine. I had no issue.
Real quick, Gabe, I got something for the pod just to liven things up a little bit. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Everybody stand back. Here we go. I'm going to try not to set my apartment on fire. Oh, my gosh. It didn't work. It's a party popper, and it didn't go off. I'm so disappointed.
That was a rough moment in pod history, but we'll
I got another one.
We'll overcome.
I got 11 more. I'm going to keep trying.
Okay. Just keep going.
There we go.
Okay, there you go. We're having a party. All right, Drew, first off, man, let's get to it. Like, we've talked all football on the show for the first 2 hours, but we're transitioning into the basketball phase of things a little bit. So you sat and talked with Dennis Gates for, I don't know, close to an hour. That's going to be a two-part thing. Just give people an idea. First of all, guys, go to the site, read the story, but give people an idea, kind of the major talking points and in what you took out of talking to Dennis.
Yeah, so we touched on a whole lot of stuff. Really wanted to kind of reflect on his first 2 years, some of the things some of the accomplishments that he was proudest of so far during his tenure as head coach here. Got into the newcomers. Obviously, they've got 10 new guys altogether, 5 transfers, 5 freshmen, and both classes are really, really highly rated. So he's excited about bringing those guys in and just kind of what they're going to do for the program and how much that has helped keep the momentum of the team going. I asked him a lot about the returners and kind of what last season means to them, right? Is it something that they're using as motivation, or is it something more that they want to move on from? We talked about the new coaches they brought on the staff. We talked about the schedule this year, and then kind of touched on what's coming down the pipeline in terms of NCAA rule changes. So yeah, like we hit on pretty much everything under the sun. So make sure to go check out the first part today and then the second part tomorrow. And shouts to Andrew Kessel.
Yeah, Andrew Kessel just bought the PowerMizzou champagne. So we appreciate that, Andrew. Thank you very much. Again, super chats, tips, always appreciated. We're never going to ask you for them, but look, and I don't say this, like, this is our job. Like, we get paid for our job, so we're not asking for it. But we're trying to make this day and this weekend, really the next few months, incredibly worth it to you guys. So we do appreciate that, the acknowledgement. So Drew, you said you talked to Gates about what he was most proud of and all that. So let me go out on a limb here. Mm-hmm. What he was most proud of year 1, what he was not most proud of year 2. Does that kind of just sum it up?
I would say so. Yeah. He talks a lot about the 3 C's being champions on the court, in the classroom, and the community. So we talked about kind of some of the off the court stuff that he's proud of too. He's had 2 student athlete of the year award winners on his teams so far. Like, that's something that he can hang his hat on. But on the court, yeah, like, I think that first year, he's a lot more proud of than the second.
Yeah, understandable. But like, we know judgments are going to be made after this year, right? Like, I'm not saying that that's fair, but we've got one really good, one really bad. People are going to look at this as the rubber year. Do you get the sense that Dennis knows that's coming, that he understands kind of that's what this year is going to be in the eyes of a lot of fans? Or frankly, I don't even know if he cares. Even if he does know it's coming, I don't know that. Like, that's not saying a bad thing. That's not saying he doesn't care what fans think, but I'm not sure that's on Dennis's radar.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like, I don't think he's thinking about that part of it specifically at all. What I do think is interesting, though, is like, I think he's really wants to prove that last year it was a fluke, right? Like, he really wants to move on from the 0-19 record that's hanging over his head right now. And like, he can point to a lot of things that make you say this is still moving in a right direction, right? Because they still nailed it in the transfer portal. They haven't really lost any momentum recruiting wise. And there's still crowds showing up to the games, as bad as they were. Like, Mizzou Arena wasn't empty last year, So I think that he's still really excited about where it's going to go. But he has to prove it, right? And so I don't know that he's necessarily worried about that part of it right now. But that's kind of Dennis for you, right? Like, he's going to talk about what he wants to talk about.
And he would never tell us. You would never be able to tell if he was worried. Like, if you said, is Dennis fill in the blank of an emotion? I don't know. Happy? Maybe. Mad? Maybe. I don't know. That's just not a side we see.
Calm.
Yeah. Stoic? Yes, he is that. Look, I know you got a chance to go to a practice a few weeks back. I can't remember exactly when it was. and obviously you talk to Gates. Do you get any sense for like how this team wants to play? Like, hey, we're going to hang our, I mean, I know he says every year, like we're going to lead the country in 3-pointers, but you get any sense stylistically, like what he thinks this team might do well?
Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind was like how they played last year was not how they wanted to play last year. They kind of had to reconfigure everything after the injuries that they had. They didn't necessarily want to have Sean East taking every shot. So I think it's going to look a lot more like his first year, a little bit more run and gun, racking up a bunch of steals and putting up a lot of shots. And I think that he's got more horses to do it than he did last year. So that's kind of what think we're going to see this year is just kind of more towards that first year.
I mean, thank God, at least it'll be more fun to watch, right? They were fun to watch 2 years ago. They were just not fun. And yes, 0-19 was part of it, but like they just weren't fun to watch. And I don't think that's his fault. I don't think that's the way he wanted to play. Want to hit a couple of the comments here. King Goon. Yes, sir, I am a coffee drinker. I actually showed up at Drew's house at 9:30, 10 o'clock last night with a cup of coffee and then got one on my way home at 4:30 this morning. When I don't sleep, my system does not need an extra amount of coffee when I have to be on YouTube for 3 hours. So I am normally a coffee drinker. Drew being soda only is alarming on several levels. I don't know exactly what those levels are, Drew, but I do want to offer you the chance to respond.
Well, I mentioned on the message board, I'm not a coffee drinker, and I really haven't delved into the world of energy drinks. So soda's pretty much my primary source of caffeine. And like, look, y'all know at this point, I'm a really picky eater. So coffee and other forms of caffeine just aren't really under my umbrella. Soda is the only one that is. So apologies if that alarms people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's alarming. I don't know if it's necessarily the healthiest thing you could do, but hey, I don't do all the healthiest things I could do either. Do want to address Joshua. Has Gabe slept yet? Have not. We are at 29 hours. We have media day at noon. I'm going to be on the radio this afternoon. The Royals play baseball at 3:30, and then Jarod and I are live at 7, and sleep comes after that. So that is that's my sleep schedule. Okay, this is another one. Is it pop or is it soda? Because I called it pop growing up, but now I call it soda.
See, in Texas, a lot of people just call it Coke, right? I need
that's
Coke.
weird. That's weird.
I usually just go with soda.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what the dividing line is because I grew up in Kansas City and I called it pop, but it's not like I moved a long way away or anything. And now I call it soda. Maybe I just grew up. All right. So give people an idea, like what else you got coming. Obviously part 2 of the Gates conversation is going to go up tomorrow, I think.
Yes.
But then other basketball coverage leading up to, it's wild. We are 34 days away, I think, from the season opener.
Correct. So every day for the next month, really, I'm going to have a story or two coming out. So starting today, we're going to have Mizzou's opponent previews with the SEC teams. So I'll have Auburn coming out today and the rest of them coming out over the next 2 weeks. I'll have a recruiting roundup on just like kind of everybody who's made an official visit to campus recently. That'll come out on Wednesday. And then we'll have some more updates on recruits as they come in. And then later this month, I'll have player profiles on every guy on the roster, just talking about what to expect from them this year. And hopefully we can get some more stuff done too, because we got a lot of ideas that we're trying to make happen. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
All right. I'm going to wrap you up with, hopefully you were listening when Jarod or Sean was on and you're kind of ready for this question, but like what your role, you cover basketball, cover recruiting, what excites you about making the move we're making here?
Yeah. I mean, you've kind of consistently said, shouts to Sean. You've consistently said, you know, with this move, the basketball coverage might benefit the most because of how good 24/7's national team is and their coverage. So I'm really looking forward to working those guys. I know you think really highly of Eric Bossi. So looking forward to getting to know him and just seeing like what all else we can accomplish with the new site. So definitely excited about the move.
Yep, for sure. And appreciate it. I will just forward Andrew's super chat to you. That will pay you back for the champagne. And Drew, appreciate everything, man. Gonna send you back. It's really weird. I have not been on the message boards for 2.5 hours. I have absolutely no idea what's going on. So I'm going to leave you and Sean and Jarod in charge of that for another 40 minutes or so.
It's going well. It's going well. Y'all come join the party.
That's what I like to hear. All right. So yeah, Drew King joining us. We're going to do some more basketball stuff coming up. Also may have a little bit more football stuff. Here we go. Guys, this is timing out. Like, I'm not actually this good at this. It's actually just worked out really well today. So our next guest is back in our green room. Just need a wave or a thumbs up. No, you can hear me and we can pop you on the screen. We are good to go. And Missouri fans, you are going to know this guy. This is Carl Reed, 24/7 Sports. Before that, certainly well-known high school football coach in St. Louis. Carl, what's going on today, man? How you doing?
What's going on, my brother, man? It's good to welcome you, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, you were one of the guys I talked to about making this move, and I said, all right, tell me why I should do it. So that's what I'm going to ask you. Like, we got all these Missouri fans watching. A lot of them have already signed up, but tell them why they should do it. Like, tell them 24/7 what's good for them.
Well, number one, they should do it because they've been following you for a very long time, and you've been incredible in your coverage of Missouri football, going way back to when I was a high school coach. The job that you do, not only covering recruiting, the different coaching changes that have happened, what's going on in the staff, and what's going on inside the locker room is second to none. I thought it was very important to get you over here because we needed a presence in Missouri, at the University of Missouri in the 24/7 network. And when you think about the platform that has been built here at 24/7, and also the additional support that you get from the CBS network, it's going to give the Missouri fans a coverage area like they've never had before. Focus on Missouri. And when you think about what's going on in the right time, how well Missouri football has been playing, I think that it's an unbelievable situation for you here, Gabe, and for your followers.
Yeah, we're excited for it. Definitely team up with you and everybody else over here. So, look, obviously you've seen Eli Drinkwitz from a couple times, and you've watched this Missouri football program over a long period of time. Is this the height of excitement that you can remember from this fan base and around the state?
Well, Missouri football has never been big. Maybe if you go back to when J Mack and Chase Daniel and them were playing for Gary Pinkel, I think we got up to #1 in the nation. And it was pretty high. But other than that time in history, I would say that what Eli Drinkwitz has going on right now at the University of Missouri is second to none that I've seen. And I've dealt with Coach Pinkel in recruiting. I've dealt with, obviously, with Barry and now with Drink. And I think what he's been able to do, not only in recruiting, but the way that he's established culture, the way that he has also recruited both locally and regionally and nationally. He's been able to get recruits from different parts. He's been able to keep guys like Luther Burden at home. University of Missouri is undefeated, coming off an 11-win season last year. I don't think the excitement has ever been this high around Missouri football, Gabe.
Yeah. You mentioned Luther, and look, we could, you and I have talked about St. Louis recruiting, Missouri, all that. When I was talking to Tom Loy earlier, I asked kind of a similar question, and let's go into this being honest. Yes, NIL plays a part, right? It's not all, hey, everybody's happy and loves the fan. NIL is a part of it. But people in St. Louis that in addition to that, like why has this worked? Why has Drinkwitz unlocked something there that it doesn't seem to me like even Gary Pinkel was ever really able to fully unlock?
Well, it's a couple of things. Number one, I don't think that you can discredit it by saying NIL is a factor. I think NIL is definitely a factor, but you have to give credit to the people in the state of Missouri who participated and who supported it. The University of Missouri was down for a long time. So to me, that's a testament to the people in our state, Gabe, where we from, that people wanted to participate to see Missouri football be great. So I don't think from an NIL perspective, you can use that as a negative. The second thing I think that Drink has done, which is not is always popular among the high school coaches, but it was necessary. I thought that Gary Pinkel and Coach Odom spent a lot of time trying to make all the high school football coaches in the state of Missouri, specifically St. Louis, happy. They met with them, they cliniced with them, they talked to them. But those guys get upset when you don't offer their players. So you might have 4 to 5 schools in the city that have a player that's good enough to play in the SEC. So I think what Drink did that was really phenomenal was instead of focusing on 200 high schools, he focuses on the schools that have players that are good enough to play in the SEC, and he puts all his resources into those schools, and it strengthens the relationship that you have with the players that you're recruiting because you're not dealing with petty arguments from 80% of the schools are never going to have a kid that's going to play at Missouri anyway. And so you're creating a relationship with them that can turn negative when they get upset that you're not recruiting their kids. You really got to focus on the guys. When Urban Meyer and Saban and the Dabos and the Lincoln Rileys, when those guys came into St. Louis, they came and saw the 1 or 2 kids that they were trying to get. They got on the plane and they went to their next stop. And I really think the coach at the University of Missouri almost has to treat it exactly the same way.
All right, so you mentioned Luther, and 2 questions about Luther, and then I'm going to let you go. Number one, I've always said what I think has held Missouri back a little bit on in-state recruiting is it's never been seen as cool to go to Missouri, right? Like it was always, yeah, it's there. It's the easy. A lot of people go there. I know a lot of kids in my class that go there. Not very many kids go to Oklahoma or Texas or Georgia or whatever. Like that's a cooler place to say you're going to school. Do you get the sense that Luther is cool or cooler to go to Missouri?
Well, Luther's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So if it's cool enough for Luther, I think it's got to be cool enough for whoever you want. But also, just from a standpoint, it was seen in the past as if you could go play at Texas, if you could play at Bama, if you could play at Ohio State, that was more of an exclusive situation. College football is not like that anymore, not just because of NIL, but also the transfer portal. Look at these rosters and the way that they've been depleted. You don't have the depth of just 5-star after 5-star, even at what's considered the blue blood programs. So this is a great time for kids from St. Louis and for guys in the state of Missouri, whether you're in Kansas City, mid-Missouri, wherever you're at, to really consider staying and playing for your home state school and giving the Tigers a real strong look for your career.
All right, last one, and I'm not going to ask you to rank kids because that's not fair, especially when you coach some of them. But when Luther Burden is done playing football, he's going to be in a pretty select group of kids from St. Louis. Like, is that group like 3 kids, 5 kids? You know, where you're putting him in the list of guys that they're going to be talking about in that city for 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, I feel like we've been talking about Touchdown Luther since he was 6 years old. So we've already been talking about him for quite a long time. But yeah, Gabe, absolutely. He's going to be near the top of that list when you start thinking about guys like Ezekiel Elliott, when you start thinking about guys, Jamar Fletcher that played at Hazelwood, the Johnson brothers who played at my alma mater, Hazelwood Central, Mario and Lee Johnson. Obviously, Tony Van Zant, who was the greatest high school football player to ever come out the state of Missouri, a former Missouri Tiger as well. Luther, for what he did in high school, for how he was able to play in college, and for what it looks like his professional trajectory is as well, with being a first-round guy. Obviously, Jeremy Macklin would be in that conversation as well. Another guy, if I was ranking them 1 through 5, I won't do that because I don't want all of those guys calling me and getting upset with me. I know them all pretty well, but it's a ton of great players who've come out the city of St. Louis, and Luther definitely has etched his name near the top of that list.
All right, Carl, appreciate you making some time for me, being flexible this morning, man, and good to catch up.
My brother, before I get out of here, man, I just want to thank you, man, for your continued coverage and exposure for the athletes in St. Louis. You do a tremendous job. You're going to be a tremendous addition to this network, and I hope that everybody follows you over here, man. You're one of the very best in the business, Gabe. I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Venmo's on its way. Appreciate that.
All right, top for cash out.
There you go. All right. Carl Reed hanging out with us. We got I'm telling you guys, these guests, man, they're perfect. They roll in, they sit in the green room for like 60 seconds, they wave at me, we're ready to go. This guy is like not kidding with you guys. First of all, excellent hat on Eric Bossi. We all know that the biggest story of the day is about 5 hours away in Baltimore, Maryland. But like, I'm not kidding you guys. One of the most exciting things for me about coming over 24/7 was a chance to work with Bossi again. And Eric, and I can speak for us. We're incredibly excited about this to be able to have the resources of you and your whole team.
Hey, Gabe, glad to have you. So glad to be reunited after about 5 years now. Really looking forward to all of this.
It seems like 5 years ago we agreed to do this and we had to shut up and not tell anybody, right, for about 6 months. So, yeah, but I'm going to kind of ask you the same thing I've asked a lot of the other 24/7 people on here to start with, which is for our fans watching, for people who are going to listen to this and thinking, should I subscribe or not? Like, give them the pitch, man. Like, what makes 24/7 the place that they should come, irrespective of just what we're going to do, but from a national perspective?
The thing that I think sets us apart is our overall experience, and on the basketball side, our dedication to covering it nationally. With the team of myself as the director of basketball, Adam Finkelstein is the director of scouting, and then our writers, Travis Branham, Deshaun London, and Brandon Jenkins. There's not a more experienced group. I'm now 25 years deep in this. So I've been around, seen a lot. Adam has been around for a while and has done a lot of work on the TV side with ESPN prior to coming to us. And then with Deshaun, Brandon, and Travis, we've got three of the brightest and best up-and-coming guys in the game. Nobody gets out and sees more stuff than us. So when you're getting our opinions, they are very definitely coming from being on the ground and being at that level in terms of contacts with coaches and everything like that. I just don't think anyone has a speed.
So what I love is when the national guys are local to us, right? And you've been based in Kansas City for a long time. So everybody that Missouri, not everybody, but most of the kids Missouri recruits, like is probably a car ride for you. So let's talk a little. Drew and I were just talking about basketball. He sat down with Dennis Gates for about 50 minutes, and this year feels like, it's not fair, but this year feels like Missouri fans are going to draw their conclusions, right? Year one was great. Year two was awful. Year three is when I make my decision on Dennis Gates. Like, whether that's fair or not, I think that's kind of where we're heading. I mean, what are your thoughts on just Dennis and the program, where they're at going into year three?
Well, first of all, I think the fact that Mizzou fans in general are going to need a year three to make a decision on him is a sign of just how good he is. Now, let me explain why that is. Because first year was way better than people expected. And then we were expecting, another solid season last year, and just went completely off the tracks, right? I think in today's era of sports, not just college sports, but sports in general, most general fans would have given up on a guy and a team after a season like that. But I think that he built such a great, foundation and laid the groundwork that people can see his future vision. I think there's going to be a big bounce back, and I think Missouri fans are going to be happy with him. Now, I think it's pretty well noted that I'm very high on Dennis Gates and continue to be so. And I just look at what they've got coming in this year, and I really think they're going to be competitive. And I think that now they're in a position to kind of surprise some people.
All right, so let's talk about that, what they got coming in. They got this 5-man freshman class. Who's your guy that you look at and say, out of these five, like, he's the most ready to be a part of something this year as a true freshman? I
mean, you just look at him because he already looks like he's been on college campus for a couple of years. Honor Boateng, he's got to be that guy for him. He was a borderline McDonald's All-America. He's a guy that's put significant resources into recruiting and landing. So he's got to come in and be ready to play. So I think he's the guy that should be, and by all sounds like he's tracking to be the instant guy. Now, if we're talking long-term, the guy that I've always been really high on, and I think the staff is growing more and more excited about, is the 7-footer from down in Houston, Trent Burns. He's got a ways to go physically, but in a new era of mobile, skilled big men, that's being ushered in by everyone wanting to try and compete with Victor Wembanyama, he's a guy that you really need to keep an eye on. And now I'm not saying he's Wemby. Let's make that very, very clear. But, he's this long, wispy guy who can really move and, plays much more of a face-up finesse game. Well, I think as he adjusts to college basketball, Mizzou's really got something in him.
The other, I don't know, 7-footer, depending on where you read it in this class, who the question about him is not, is he big enough to play immediately? What's your Peyton Marshall expectation year one?
I'm usually with most big men, unless it's like an elite, well-known, like ready out of the box big men, they're generally gonna need a little bit of time. Now, the great thing about Peyton is that he took pretty seriously last year at Overtime Elite, getting himself into shape and really, really changed his body. Like, he's still a big dude, but if you would have seen that kid as a freshman, as a sophomore, as a junior in high school, like I've had the ability to do, you would be pretty shocked at his transformation. And I think a 17 or an 18-year-old doesn't have that happen magically. That takes some work ethic and some vision for the future and goals. So, he's a guy who's going to come in and take up a lot of space, be able to play with physicality for the SEC. Now, adjusting to some of the speed and athleticism he's going to see is going to be interesting, but there's no reason to think that he can't play some quality role minutes as a freshman.
All right, let's transition a little bit to this upcoming recruiting class. We know they got Aaron Rowe on board, looking at a couple other guys, but it kind of feels like this class hinges a little bit on Davion Hannah. Everything I've heard, they feel very good about their chances there. I think I haven't looked at the updated rankings, been a little bit busy, not sure exactly where we have him right now, but top 30-ish kid. What can you tell me about his game and about how he, if he ends up at Missouri, how he fits what Gates likes?
Davion is a kid from Milwaukee who's now down at Link Academy in Branson. He's 6'5", long ball handler with some explosion. Jump shot remains a work in progress, but he can get in the lane. He can make plays for other people. Real utility guard who can play, 1 through 3. If you're looking for maybe, everyone always wants a comparison on things. When I see him, and again, comparisons are comparisons, they're not equal to. I see a little bit of young DeJounte Murray in him, long, athletic playmaker who's a little bit rough around the edges, maybe a little bit wild at times, but has some real tools, especially he has a chance to be a real clamp down defender. So he's a guy that's really interesting because he released a top 8 or 9 or whatever towards the end of the summer, and Mizzou did not even make that list. Next thing you know, they get him on campus, and now if they're not the team to beat, they're right there. I think he's got one more visit left to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's kind of interesting because they've got some legitimate ties with him. One of the assistants there recruited his brother at Bradley, so there's a tight family relationship. And obviously NIL things always come into play, and Cincinnati does pretty well in that regard. Ohio State is in there still a bit, so it seemed like it was going to be Alabama for a minute, but they really seem to have tailed off unless something changes. So I would probably put Missouri and with a little bit of a slight lead. They've still got to survive one more visit, although I think in a perfect world, they would hope he ends up canceling that visit. But he's a guy that's looking like a really good shot with.
All right, so I want to wrap it up because, truthfully, Eric Bossi is the only guy on this stream who can rival getting as little sleep as the PowerMizzou staff did last night. So I just want to wrap it up. I'm going to throw one at you. I didn't prep you for this at all. Who's the next guy out of the Kansas City area that is going to be kind of a, hey, this is one everybody's going to be paying attention to? Anybody pop off the top of your head?
Yeah, so Kansas City and St. Louis a little bit right now. We're a little bit of a down cycle right now. The two young guys in Kansas City that Mizzou is tracking are Ethan Taylor, a junior at Shining Mission Northwest, 6'10" big man, and Cam Barnes, kind of a 6'6" mismatched power forward, at least Summit West, who is a sophomore. But those guys, they're not in the, Rush Brother category or, even Mark Mitchell or anything like that. Not yet. Probably the best young prospect in the state of Missouri, or at least arguably about it, and a guy that Mizzou is all over early, is Chase Branham down in Springfield. He's a 6'3" point guard, can really, really shoot, and does a lot of nice things. Him and then Scotty Atkinson over in Webster Groves in St. Louis is another who's going to be a guy with a chance to be really good long term. So you get Atkinson and Branham and Barnes. I think you've got 3 guys who all have a very good chance to be good enough to play in Mizzou. And, for the young guys, that's kind of where things lie.
Bossi, always appreciate you, man. I hope you get a nap. You'll beat me to one, I think, but be watching some baseball this afternoon.
I don't know. I'm too old to nap. As you get older, taking a nap sounds great, but it's really hard to fit in. And be damned with getting in at 3:30 from Vegas. I had to be on with the king of the 573 today, and just so excited to have you with us at 24/7, Gabe.
I appreciate that. I'm excited too. I don't want to live in a world where I'm too old to nap. I just want to say that world doesn't exist for me. So appreciate you, man. We'll definitely catch up in the next few days.
Sounds great.
All right, Eric Bossi joining us, and we are closing in on 3 hours, guys. I don't know if we'll quite get there, but we're closing in. We promised it. We're going to finish strong. Football was the first 2/3 of the show, did the basketball in the last third, and we are now going to finish up with Isaac Trotter, 24/7 Sports, national college basketball writer. Isaac, we saved you for the end so you can leave everybody feeling good. Just come on here and tell them all Dennis Gates is going to win a basketball game sometime this year.
Well, it can't be worse than last year, right? Like that's
no, look, in the words of Royals manager Buddy Bell, never say it can't get worse.
That is true. That is true. But, I think it's one of those situations where as I was kind of looking through this team, I split the portal up into like these various different positions, and you're kind of figuring out your favorite fits. And if you look for like some of those top wing handlers, it's hard to find a better fit than Mark Mitchell to Missouri. And then when you're kind of looking at one of those big combo sturdy guards that can defend multiple positions, kind of score at multiple levels, it's hard to find better fits than Tony Perkins transferring from Iowa to Mizzou. So if you're just point blank looking at the talent level, I think it's raised. Now, the SEC is going to be a bear this year, but I think when you look in the portal and go, hey, we just got 2 actual alphas that we know can be double-digit scorers at that level, that just really raises the floor and gives you a chance to really compete. And it's really funny, right? Because after year 1, I think everybody in the SEC was like, well, Dennis Gates is awesome at his job. And, man, what the heck is Lamont Paris doing at South Carolina? How's that going? After year 2, Lamont Paris is like the savior, the next great coach in the SEC. And now we have questions about Dennis Gates. So it's hard to be – you just try not to be too reactive after a rough year because, 365 days ago, Dennis Gates was like the talk of the town after year 1.
Right. Well, and kind of along those lines, I was talking with Richard Johnson earlier, football writer for CBS Sports, and I was saying, last weekend kind of taught us what we should already know, which is quit pretending we know everything in September and August about these teams because we don't know jack. They're going to go out and be completely different, and that's true in football. But like, how do you go into a college basketball season at this point? This is Dennis Gates' 3rd year. It's his 3rd year with at least 10 new guys on the roster. How do you go into a college basketball season really professing to know anything about anyone? And I don't say that as a shot. I don't know how anyone would do it.
No, it's a great point. Now, here's my thing. How much does retention matter when everyone has new staffs and everyone has new rosters? Like this is mayhem for everybody. I think in this cycle we had 66 or 67 new new coaches at the Division I ranks. And then you factor in teams like Mizzou, who, yes, they didn't have a coaching change, but this roster is completely different. That's where I think it's fascinating. I'm kind of operating under the premise of like, we know less than we've ever done before. And I'm kind of banking on proof of concepts from previous staffs that have put this together. Those staffs that maybe had JUCO backgrounds, those staffs that we've seen them turn it over and put rosters together. And then also just going in with a plan. I think what we saw with Missouri last year, this was the worst rim defense in the SEC. Team shot 60% at the rim last year. I think that was a real adding size, adding beef to this front court was a real priority for this staff. Like, how do you get bigger defensively on the perimeter so that we don't have to necessarily, play up in the passing lanes all the time? I think we're going to see some tweaks adjustment-wise defensively because you can still be what you want to be defensively, but we also have to see what works. And what works in the SEC is rim defense. This is the best shot blocking league in the SEC or in the country. And you have to actually have some presence at the back end. And I think Missouri has done that, not just with just adding some of the bigs, but I think adding like a Mark Mitchell is a secondary rim protector, adding a Jacob Cruz who's 6'8", adding, legit big, strong guards that can kind of beef you up on the perimeter and not allow some of those paint touches. I think you're starting to see that. So, there's so many different angles that you can attack with how these rosters look and all of the new changes, but you're trying to find that identity. You're trying to find like the teams that actually make sense, like these rosters make sense. There's a lot of teams out there that don't make sense, that put it together. It's a talent grab, like, hey, we'll throw these together and let's see how it works. I think that's where Mizzou, if you're making the bull case for them, you can start to see where some of these pieces start to fit together on paper a little bit better than some others.
So you said in there that Missouri was the worst rim defense team in the SEC. Look, there were a lot of sentences that started Missouri was the worst in things last year. If they're gonna get this turnaround, and to me, like with the whole portal and all that, Missouri fans have always said, well, we should make the tournament every year. If we don't, it's a failure. And I never thought that was necessarily true in the past because it's never happened. Now, though, that's the goal every single year, right? Like it is reasonable. Dennis Gates proved it in year one. I can come in and take over. I can't think of a nice way to say what he took over. It was bad. And I can take that to the tournament. So he proved it could be done. Then he proved he could take that the other way to 0-19. If Missouri's going to make that rebound again and be a tournament team, the lead guy on this team, the guy we're going to get to the end of the year and say, that's their guy, that's their star, that's their Kobe Brown. Who is it?
It's Mark Mitchell, and I think for a long time last year at Duke, he was kind of trying to struggle to find who he was and, hey, what's my job? Am I in the dunker spot? Am I just here to guard? Do I just run hard in transition? They rarely ran any plays for him. He had, I think, the 6th highest usage rate on that roster. It's just different, right? And I think now as you come into Missouri, he has a chance to be the player that a lot of people expected him to be when he picked Duke out of high school. And this is an opportunity for him to have the highest usage rate of his career, have a chance to be the alpha of this group and really showcase what he can be. And, I think there were times last year we kind of got stuck in his head a little bit about the jumper. And I just want to get him back to just pressure the basket and just get as much rim pressure as possible, get to the free throw line, shoot 6, 7, 8 free throws a game, and just be a dog, be somebody that like you're the alpha of this team and play like it. And I think last year at Duke, he was kind of like, well, it's Kyle Filipowski's team. I got to get Tyrese Proctor. Like, what's my job? I think that Missouri can simplify it for him. And the additions that they've made here, getting Mark Mitchell when they did was important because I think some of the pieces now around him start to make sense. Because if you're going to have a forward who maybe he doesn't shoot it really well, but you like him as a mismatch hunter, you need guys that can shoot it. And Jacob Cruz is one of the best off movement shooters in the portal. Big time addition there. Caleb Grill, getting him back, a big time shooter. You have to respect Tony Perkins from especially the mid range, but you also have to respect him from 3-point range as well. Marquise Warwick as well. So they've added the nice little pieces here to keep that paint clear and have opportunities for Mark Mitchell to go to work. And the underrated part of this, I think there's unlocked potential with him as a booty ball threat, as a guy who can go down on the block and mismatch hunt and be somebody who can take advantage of those one-on-one matchups. And I think Missouri is going to be able to play with that a little bit with some, small on big screens, big on big screens. Like you can do a lot of different stuff to try to get an advantageous matchup and let him go to work. And it all starts with confidence because when he's playing at the best pure level of himself, I think he could be an all SEC type of, first team all SEC type of player.
You mentioned the paint and, look, I don't want to disparage anyone individually, but the last 3 or 4 years, I've seen some guys at Missouri, and I'm like, yes, I understand he is 7 feet to 7'6", somewhere in that range. That does not mean he necessarily has to be on the basketball court. They've got 2 guys this year, like Josh Gray, Peyton Marshall. Between those 2 guys, what do you think Missouri wants or needs out of them?
No, it's a great question. And again, I go back to rim defense, play defense without fouling, be really, really good on the glass, and run the floor really hard. I don't think you're kind of bringing in those guys and being like, hey, we got to feed you, 3 to 6 post-up touches per game. So I'm looking at them as like just a platoon. And that's part of like the roster construction that's kind of moving forward that really interests me. And Missouri's kind of a part of this is a lot of teams are trying to emulate that UConn model of having two bigs that they can rotate in at a time. So, UConn has won back-to-back national championships with a starter playing 25 and his backup playing 15 at center. And Missouri could potentially start to model something like that as well, where, hey, like we have 10 fouls to give here with our two bigs, and we're going to be really physical. And I like the old man and the vet, like the old vet and the young dude coming up. Like that dynamic is kind of interesting. South Carolina was way better with Josh Gray on the floor last year. I wouldn't say he is some massive needle mover, but he knows where to be. He knows what to do. He wants to be a role player. All of that stuff matters so much. So I think in an ideal world, you'd prefer to have an option that can stretch the floor from three. I don't know if either of those two guys are going to be that, but for what they bring to the table, being tough on the glass, being tough interior defensively, that's going to matter. And again, you just need raw depth in the SEC because there are some dudes in the SEC this year, especially on the front court. You guys already know the names already, but Johni Broome is maybe the best player in college basketball. Alabama goes and gets.
Well, I mean, he's 29. He's been in college for 14 years. Of course, he's the best player in college basketball.
It helps to get old.
Yeah. So real quick, hot tip. There's a story to be done somewhere on Josh Gray's Instagram feed. I have no words for it. Just check it out at some point. But I want to wrap up with this. We've talked a lot about the SEC. Bama suddenly has become a power. They add Oklahoma and Texas. I'm going to take a shot in the dark. We spent the first 2 minutes talking about how stupid it is to prognosticate. I'm going to take a shot in the dark at setting an over/under on NCAA tournament teams out of this league at 8.5.
I think I'll go over with that because
really,
here's what I go back to. The SEC is arguably one of the richest NIL conferences out there, and we're seeing it in basketball. And these rosters are loaded. I'm doing my preseason SEC power rankings right now, and I think I have Georgia in that 12 or 11 or 12 range. People around Georgia will tell you that this is their best, most talented basketball roster in the history of Georgia basketball. And they're 12th in the SEC. And some of these preseason stuff, that's how loaded this group is. You can go down the list. It's Alabama, national title contender. Arkansas feels like they're maybe a tier 2 title contender, but potentially could play their way into it. Auburn, I think, is a national championship contender with Broome back and what they've done in that backcourt. Florida, you feel really good about them. Kentucky, we'll see, but I like the roster construction moving forward. Mississippi State, Chris Jans is an awesome coach. I love the big swings that they've gone after for Riley Kugel, but the bones of that team defensively is going to be there. I'm not really bullish on Oklahoma this year, but Ole Miss, our best roster that they might have ever had in their program history after they go into the portal and just crush it. So you go down the list.
And haven't mentioned Tennessee, who might have the best coach in the league.
Who is a national title contender at number 1, and Texas A&M, who a little overrated last year, but I think they might be underrated this year with Wade Taylor back. They have some stud wing defenders too, and they're going to play really, really hard. Pharrell Payne is a transfer out of Minnesota. It's really funny. Pharrell Payne, best offensive rebounder in the country, transfers to Texas A&M, the best offensive rebounding team in the country. So I think that one's going to go pretty well. So I'll take the over 8.5. I think that there are, maybe 10 NCAA tournament caliber teams, which really shows how tough conference play is going to be when it rolls around.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. Isaac, really appreciate you taking some time, man. Wanted to give everybody just kind of a taste of everything this network has, and the college basketball coverage is awesome. Can't wait to be a part of it.
No, it's awesome to have you guys here. I've been a fan for a long time, even when I was covering high school recruiting football back in the day for Illini Inquirer. Gabe, you guys were always the beast back then, and it's really cool to have you on our side this time.
Thanks, man. We'll definitely be in touch and talk to you down the road.
Have a good one.
All right, Isaac Trotter, wrapping it up, guys. That was, 11, 12 guests. I've got to get to this. Mitchell Stevens, we just didn't have a break between guests. Thank you very much for the super chat. Really happy he kept the IP and the team. Look, guys, that was the important thing to me making this move here, is that everybody came with me. I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it without, if somebody said, hey, I got another thing I want to do. I'm not going to say it would have all fallen apart, but it was very important to me. This isn't starting over, guys. This is taking what we've done for 21 years and moving it to a new place. We are not building a new house. We are picking up the house we have lived in, and we are just moving it across the road at a place where we feel like there is a little more around us that can help us be even better than we've already been. So look, we're in the house, like we're living here. We've paid the down payment. We got to make mortgage payments every month. We're here. We hope you guys will be too. Day one is, look, again, I'm not going to promise you 3 hours on YouTube every day. I'm not going to promise you 15 stories every day. Like, yeah, we're making a splash here this first week, right? But you're going to get this level of coverage and effort and energy out of us going forward. Like this is re-energized all of us. We want this. We have to earn your guys' business again. We had it. If we just want to sit there and make, what we're making for the number of people that were already on our site, we could do that. We're all very comfortable. We're betting on ourselves. 24/7 is betting on us that we can come not only rebuild what we had, but make it better. We took that house and now we're going to make improvements to it. We really appreciate you guys not only hanging out here, but like being on the message boards. I know they've been super active, signing up for the site for everybody who has. If you haven't, you're going to have a couple more days where you can get 75% off. So, hey, if you want to take a look for the next 24 hours or so and say, hey, is this really something I want to spend $26 on? I know, and I don't say this jokingly. I know $26 is a significant thing to some people, right? I know that $99 when it becomes full price, that's not money that you just toss away and say, yeah, I don't care if this is any good. So we take seriously the opportunity to earn your subscription, earn your business. The address to the promo has been running across the bottom of the screen throughout the entire show, but just type in PowerMizzou.com, go to it. You're going to see it like 19 different places on the site. 75% off for at least the next approximately 60 hours at this point. We've been here 11 hours, so 61 hours. So check it out. Just give us a chance. Again, if you hate it, it was $26 for a year, guys. We think you're not going to hate it. We hope you know our track record. We appreciate everybody who's come with us already and hope to have the rest of you join us. I'm going to run down the guest list one more time just to make sure that I thank everybody who was a part of this thing. Bud Elliott, Jarod Hamilton, Alan Trieu, Sean Williams, Tom Lloyd, Richard Johnston, Adam Stanko, Drew King, Carl Reed, Eric Bossi, Isaac Trotter. Much appreciated. Appreciate all you guys who hung out with me. I could talk for 4 more minutes to say we got to 3 hours, guys, but I'm not going to do it. We got Eli Drinkwitz in 1 hour and 4 minutes. So we're going to shut it down here. Jarod Hamilton and I will be back. State of the Tigers live tonight, 7 p.m. right here on this same channel. Thank you so much for hanging out. We will talk to you on the message boards. We will talk to you next time. Until then, Gabe DeArmond signing off. See you over at 24/7 Sports.